Chapter 23:51. Stop talking nonsense with him. Leave this kid to me. I'll kill him myself. Leng Wudao stepped forward and then urged Yao Qing. David looked at Leng Wudao and sneered, "You ignorant bastard, since you believe that I killed your son, I have nothing to say. But you must be a real piece of shit to raise a son who is neither male nor female." David's words immediately hit Leng Wudao's weakness. His son's temperament had been the shame of his life, with many people ridiculing him behind his back. Now that David dared to humiliate him publicly, Leng Wudao was enraged. "You little bastard, today I will definitely smash your corpse into 10,000 pieces." A terrifying aura erupted from Leng Wudao's body, his eyes scarlet with fury. "Then give it a try." After David finished speaking, a strange cry suddenly came from his mouth. The sound resembled an animal's cry, yet not entirely. The deep voice spread far into the dark night. David's sudden, strange behavior startled everyone, leaving them puzzled about what he was doing. Leng Wudao looked at David and frowned slightly. "What the hell are you howling about?" However, David ignored him, and the sound from his mouth grew louder and louder. Suddenly, a golden light burst from David's body, slowly rising. The entire night was illuminated as brightly as day, and that golden light actually exuded a terrifying monstrous aura. The aura spread rapidly, covering a distance of tens of miles in an instant. Looking at the golden light slowly rising above David's head, everyone was stunned. But at this moment, the ground began to tremble violently, like an earthquake, shaking so much that people struggled to stay steady. Immediately afterward, a rumbling sound emerged, as if coming from the sky, growing closer. It wasn't until the sound was upon them that everyone saw a horde of monstrous beasts roaring and charging toward them madly. All kinds of monsters rushed forth as if insane. This time, everyone was shocked. They had never witnessed such a scene before. Roar! A giant lion roared furiously, and all the monsters roared in response. At this moment, some timid people turned and fled. Facing so many monsters, some people's defenses finally collapsed. "Everyone, don't panic. Gather together. The beast cores of these monsters are excellent resources." Leng Wudao shouted loudly. "People die for wealth, birds for food." When Leng Wudao mentioned beast cores, some of those who wanted to run changed their minds. With their numbers and the combined strength of the sects, they could fight these monsters. Most importantly, there were so many monsters that would yield many beast cores. If they fled, they would get nothing. Leng Wudao and the others gathered tightly together, assuming a battle stance. At this moment, no one cared about David and Yu Buchuan. After all, with so many monsters, they could trample David and the others to death. Yu Buchuan, Lu Xing, and Lu Rui turned pale when they saw the dark mass of monsters charging toward them. Lu Xing and Lu Rui closely guarded Yu Buchuan, hoping only that these monsters would not trample their master. "Sect Master Yu, don't be afraid. These monsters are my little brothers, they won't hurt you," David said. "Your little brothers?" Yu Buchuan, Lu Xing, and Lu Rui looked at David in astonishment. David smiled and, without explaining, waved his hand. "Go on, kill these bastards." Leng Wudao and the others looked at David, thinking he was crazy, joking even as the monsters attacked. But soon, a scene that shocked them appeared. Whenever the monsters reached David and the others, they suddenly parted, creating a path and not attacking David's group. Instead, they roared and charged directly at Leng Wudao and the others, leaving Yu Buchuan and his companions speechless in shock. Chapter 23:52. Soon, the scene descended into chaos as the monsters battled Leng Wudao and his allies. These monsters were fierce and unafraid of death. Yu Buchuan looked at the scene before him, then at David, his Adam's apple bobbing. "Mr. Chen, are these monsters really your little brothers?" "Of course. Otherwise, how would they listen to me?" After speaking, David stood on high ground, observed the miserable scene before him, then waved at Leng Wudao. "Take your time fighting. I'm leaving." "You little bastard, you can't leave." Leng Wudao roared furiously. He slapped a beast away and leaped toward David. He couldn't let David escape. If David got away, finding him would be difficult. But just as Leng Wudao jumped, a huge figure appeared. The giant lion opened its bloody maw and charged directly at him. For a time, Leng Wudao could only parry the giant lion, unable to stop David. And David, with Yu Buchuan and the others, quickly fled. After David left, with a roar from the giant lion, all the monsters scattered like birds and beasts. The scene was littered with corpses, those from the 3 sects and 6 schools, as well as monster remains. In this battle, although many monsters were killed, each sect also suffered considerable losses. Damn it! David got away. Who the hell is this guy? Why can he control so many monsters? Leng Wudao roared. Brother Leng, even though David escaped, it's not a total loss. We killed many monsters and gained many beast cores. Tong Haiyang consoled Leng Wudao. Leng Wudao nodded, then waved his hand, dig out all the beast cores from these dead monsters. Soon, everyone took action, harvesting beast cores from the monster corpses. But quickly, they discovered that the beast cores they extracted were gray, devoid of any luster. Leng Wudao held a beast core, his face puzzled. What's going on? Tong Haiyang took the beast core and examined it, frowning deeply. These beast cores have been drained of energy in a short time. That's why they're this color, they're worthless now. Who the hell did this? Who could absorb so many beast cores? Leng Wudao was astonished. Dozens of monsters, and all their beast cores had been drained. I doubt it's anyone but David. Haven't you noticed? David's strength has clearly improved a lot. This kid must have some treasure or secret. Tong Haiyang analyzed. Damn it! I'll catch him sooner or later, skin him alive, and find out what secrets he holds. Leng Wudao gritted his teeth. We should order a halt to hunting monsters for now. These beast cores are worthless. We need to wait for these monsters to recover before hunting again. Then the beast cores will be valuable. Tong Haiyang said. Fine. Without beast cores, there are other resources here, enough for us to survive and cultivate. But that David, as long as he's in this secret realm, I must find him. Leng Wudao clenched his fists, his eyes filled with rage. Let's clean up the scene. We need to hurry and find a suitable place. After Tong Haiyang finished speaking, everyone began cleaning up, burying the corpses. On the other side, David, Yu Buchuan, Lu Xing, and Lu Rui hurried through the jungle. Because Yu Buchuan hadn't fully recovered, their speed wasn't very fast. But with no pursuers behind, David and the others were in no rush. Those people aren't chasing us. I think we should find a place to rest first so Sect Master you can fully recover. David suggested. Chapter 2353. Lu Xing and Lu Rui nodded. After all, at this moment, everything can only be done by David. David and the others found a small cave that could accommodate several people, and they rested in the cave that night. David let Yu Buchuan practice with peace of mind so as to recover his body, but Yu Buchuan couldn't enter the state of cultivation at all. Hey, it's all me, and it's all because of me that the disciples of the sect were killed and injured. How can I, the suzerain, have the face to meet the ancestors? Yu Buchuan's face was full sad. After all the disciples of the Pure Yang sect were killed or injured, and many of them chose to blow themselves up in order to save Yu Buchuan. This made Yu Buchuan feel very uncomfortable. Lu Xing also reminded at that time that he was afraid that other sects would attack Chunying's sect, but Yu Buchuan was still too optimistic, thinking that other sects were well-known and decent, and would not do such a thing. But in fact, these people can do anything for profit, and it's no different from following those evil cultivators. Now Yu Buchuan realized the reality, but it was too late. All the disciples of Chunyang's sect were dead except Lu Xing and Lu Rui. Seeing Yu Buchuan like that, Lu Xing and Lu Rui also fell into grief. The senior brothers who were fine a second ago are now corpses. Sect Master Yu, these people are too cunning and have nothing to do with you. Don't worry, as long as they stay in this secret realm, I will make them pay the price. David comforted Yu Buchuan one sentence. Mr. Chen, we have dragged you down. Yu Buchuan said in embarrassment. Sect Master Yu, if it wasn't for you, I might have died by now. Stop thinking about it, take a good rest, and recover your body as soon as possible. After David finished speaking, he walked out of the cave. He knew that Yu Buchuan, Lu Xing and Lu Rui needed to be quiet, and he needed to accept this reality slowly. How long are you going to rest, kid? Don't forget to find that place as soon as possible according to the markings on the treasure map. At this time, the old man's voice sounded. Understood. David said impatiently, then lit a cigarette, and looked up at the bright starry sky. After taking a deep breath, David spat it out heavily. Killing made David feel tired, he began to miss Sonia, and those people in Kyoto. But now he must keep moving forward, otherwise, even Sonia and the others would not be able to save them, and he would not even be able to see his own mother. I don't even know the identity of my own father. Kyoto, the secret realm of the Demon Heart sect. Dening sat on a chair, and the demon envoy knelt down on the ground, his head lowered tightly. Everyone gathered together yet? Dening said slowly. If you go back to Dening, you have already gathered everything. Except for that David, everyone has been locked in the secret realm of Wendazong. The magician replied. Very well, the moment when the spiritual energy is revived and the way of heaven is opened is coming soon. Ha ha ha, ha ha ha. Dening was very happy and laughed wantonly. Dening, when can Ningji be released? One of his soul rings is still missing in the stone statue, the emissary asked cautiously. At the last moment, it is not too late to lure that David, and let Ningji come out. I will give him resources and raise him. After so long, it is time for him to repay me. Dening said lightly. Yes. The magic envoy nodded. Dening waved his hand, and the figure of the magic envoy gradually faded away, and finally disappeared. After the magic envoy disappeared, a burst of purple light flickered on the 8 chairs on which Dening lowered his head. Then 8 people in purple robes appeared. These people all covered their faces, and no one could see their faces clearly. Seeing the appearance of the 8 purple robes, Dening said slowly, the spiritual energy is revived, the time for the opening of heaven is getting closer, and you should be ready. Understood. The 8 purple robes nodded, and then also disappeared. Chapter 2354. The Guardian Court in Kyoto. Mr. Sher was writing something at his desk when suddenly his hand shook, and a stain appeared on the original neat handwriting. Mr. Sher put down the brush in his hand, got up slowly, and walked out of the room. Looking up at the night sky, Mr. Sher muttered to himself, what should come is coming soon. After all, David, are you ready? After finishing speaking, Mr. Sher's body flashed away like a shooting star, directly slashing across the sky. Passed through the night sky, and finally landed in a courtyard. Although it was very late, the courtyard was brightly lit, and several girls were practicing sweating profusely. Seeing Mr. Sher's arrival, all the girls stood respectfully to one side. Seeing this, Mr. Sher nodded in satisfaction. Mr. Sher, I didn't expect you to have a rest at this late hour. A girl in a white dress with delicate features walked over and said. This girl is Ji Rushua, and the other girls are also women beside David. Xiaolan, Xiao Min, Gu Jai. Each of them has obtained the exercises inherited by Mr. Sher, and according to each person's characteristics, the exercises they practice are different. There is not much time left for you. If you want to stay with David, you must work hard. Perhaps in the near future, David will leave this land and go to a vaster place. He has his responsibility, and you can't be his stumbling block, understand? Mr. Sher said with a serious face. Mr. Sher, don't worry, we will work hard. For David, we are willing to give our all. Ji Rushua said firmly. Mr. Sher smiled in satisfaction, and his figure disappeared in an instant. Sisters, let's continue. If we want to follow David, we must improve our own strength. After Ji Rushua finished speaking, the girls continued to practice. In the secret territory, after 2 days of calming down, Yu Buchuan can finally calm down and practice. Lu Xing and Lu Rui are protecting Yu Buchuan. David set up magic circles around and went out to find some medicinal herbs to refine Yubuchuan's elixir so that Yubuchuan could recover faster. Otherwise, after staying here for a long time, the old man in David's body would be nagging all day long, making David very annoying. But when David left the cave to collect herbs, a group of people were approaching the cave. The leader among them is the fortune teller of the divination gang. I saw the magic operator pinching his fingers and changing his position constantly. Master, are you sure that Yubuchuan and others are nearby? It's been a few days, and they should have fled far away. A divination disciple asked. Shut up, Master's divination, you dare to question it, don't you want to live? Another student of the divination gang reprimanded loudly. They're not far away, they'll be there soon. At this moment, the fortune teller spoke. After David and the others escaped, the fortune teller secretly started divination about the location of David and the others. For David's identity, the fortune teller was very curious, who could command so many monsters. Also, the level of breath on David's body was not high, but the real strength exuded by him surprised people. So God's operator became more and more curious about David. Taking advantage of Leng Wudao and others not chasing David, the fortune teller calculated the location of David and the others, so he hurriedly brought his disciples to find them. But when Shensuanzi brought his disciples close to the cave, suddenly streaks of light lit up, and then several aura chains shot out instantly, entangling Shensuanzi and others, restraining their actions. Shensuanzi and his disciples were all shocked. They didn't expect that there was a magic circle here, but from this point of view, Shensuanzi's divination was in the right direction, and David and the others must be not far ahead. Chapter 23:55. A mere magic array wants to trap this old man? They must have forgotten what this old man does. After the diviner finished speaking, he pinched his fingers. Suddenly, the clear sky darkened, covered with black clouds, followed by several flashes of lightning. The lightning struck the magic array David had laid down, instantly shattering it to pieces. The aura chains binding the diviner also vanished at that moment. How could such a small magic array stop the master? The master is a man who can perceive the heavenly Tao and defy fate. That's right. Even the heavens listen to the master. These guys think they can escape. The master's divination skills are probably unmatched in this world. A group of the diviner's disciples began to praise him. Alright, shut up. For a teacher, this is just a trivial skill, how could it defy the heavens? The diviner reprimanded his disciples, but he was very pleased inside. Who doesn't like being flattered and praised? At this moment, David, who was gathering herbs, suddenly shuddered and frowned. Damn it, the magic array was broken. Someone has broken in. Sect Master Yu is in danger. David cursed inwardly, then his body flickered as he rushed back quickly. But by then, the diviner had already found the cave with his disciples. Looking at Lu Xing and Lu Rui guarding the cave entrance, the diviner smiled coldly, found them at last, hiding here. Seeing the diviner and his men arrive, Lu Xing and Lu Rui's expressions turned grim and tense. Yu Buchuan had not fully recovered, and David wasn't here. If the diviner made a move, the two of them would be no match at all. Master Diviner, our two families have no grievances or enmity. Why pursue us to the death? Moreover, my master has always respected Master Diviner. Lu Xing stepped forward and spoke to the diviner very respectfully. Master Diviner is someone who perceives the secrets of heaven, half an immortal, one might say. How could you walk alongside vulgar men like Leng Wudao? It tarnishes your status. Lu Rui chimed in hastily. They knew the diviner loved being praised and claimed to be the reincarnation of an immortal, half an immortal himself. With no other choice, Lu Xing and Lu Rui could only flatter the diviner, hoping to fool him into leaving. Hearing their flattery, the diviner indeed smiled. I've heard Yu Buchuan's two disciples are well-behaved and sensible. Seeing them today, they truly live up to their reputation. I'm not here to kill your master. I just want to meet that David. This kid has piqued my interest. Lu Xing and Lu Rui breathed a sigh of relief upon hearing this, as long as he wasn't here to kill them. If the diviner had murderous intent now, and the two of them couldn't stop him, Yu Buchuan would surely die. Master Diviner, since you're here to find Mr. Chen, please come in. At that moment, Yu Buchuan's voice sounded from inside the cave. Hearing this, the diviner walked toward the cave. But a disciple stopped him, saying, "Master, be careful of a trap." The diviner paused, but Yu Buchuan's voice emerged again from the cave. Master Diviner can foresee any trap. Master Diviner must have seen it long ago, am I right? Hearing this, the diviner immediately glared at his disciple and said, "Get lost. Would I, your teacher, not know if there's a trap?" After reprimanding his disciple, the diviner stepped into the cave. "Master Diviner, please sit." Seeing the diviner enter, Yu Buchuan said politely. Chapter 2356. Yu Buchuan, where is David? The diviner glanced around the small cave but saw no sign of David. With Master Diviner's skills, do you still need me to tell you where Mr. Chen is? Yu Buchuan laughed. That won't be necessary. After speaking, the diviner took out a copper coin, blew on it, and spun it in his palm a few times. Then he put away the copper coin and said, "David is on his way back. I'll wait for him a while." Master Diviner is truly powerful. It's no wonder you're called a half-immortal for being able to spy on the secrets of heaven. Yu Buchuan also praised the diviner. This time, the diviner was so flattered he seemed to float, his face full of pride. Yu Buchuan, you offended the entire Hidden World sect for one David and were almost wiped out in the end. Why bother? If you abandon that David now and sincerely repent, I'll plead for you and have Leng Wudao spare you. The diviner comforted Yu Buchuan. Master Diviner doesn't know the full story. That Leng Wudao has long looked down on everyone. We of the 3 sects and 6 schools in the Hidden World originally had no distinction of rank, but now we have to listen to that Leng Wudao. Now the Xingguan sect and the Thunder faction have clearly joined forces, and the entire Hidden World will obey them. Even Master Diviner, that cold-hearted bastard may not give you face. Yu Buchuan said this deliberately to provoke the diviner's anger. Humph, that Leng Wudao can look down on others, but if he dares to look down on me, he doesn't have the guts. But you, why help that David? Could it be he has some secret? The diviner had come precisely to find out if David had some secret. The diviner had once performed a divination for David, wanting to see what secret he held, but unfortunately, the divination revealed nothing, which piqued his curiosity. Master Diviner, if I'm not mistaken, you must have performed a divination on Mr. Chen and found nothing, right? Yu Buchuan asked. The diviner nodded. Yes, this is the first time I've encountered such a situation. Master Diviner, to be honest, Mr. Chen does indeed have a great secret. In the end, not only did they gain nothing, but they almost died. Yu Buchuan whispered. This further stirred the diviner's curiosity, exactly the outcome Yu Buchuan wanted. When David returns, I want to perform a divination on him face to face. I want to see what secrets this guy has that make him so powerful. And he can control so many monsters, making them obey him, it's unbelievable. The diviner said impatiently. At that moment, David had hurried back. Seeing the divination gang disciples at the cave entrance, David instantly felt a surge of killing intent. Mr. Chen. Seeing David about to take action, Lu Xing rushed up to meet him and said, Mr. Chen, these people are from the divination gang. Their master, the diviner, is waiting for you inside the cave. Did they make a move? David asked. Lu Xing shook his head and then whispered, no move. This diviner has a flaw, he loves to hear people flatter him. We just buttered him up, and he didn't do anything. My master is inside now, flattering him further. Hearing this, David couldn't help but laugh. He hadn't expected such a person to exist. David walked into the cave and saw the diviner sitting inside. Mr. Chen, this is Master Diviner. Yu Buchuan hastily introduced him to David. David merely nodded slightly and then sat to the side. Chapter 2357. The diviner took a look at David, as if trying to see through him, but he couldn't discern anything from David. Mr. Chen, Master Diviner can perform divination for the past and future. He wishes to do a divination for Mr. Chen and see his identity. Yu Buchuan looked at David inquiringly and said, "Alright, I also want to know who I am," David said with a faint smile. He had long wanted to know who his father was. It would be great if this diviner could truly reveal the truth. Even a figure like the Blood Demon, upon discovering the mystery of David's origins, had turned pale with fright and dared not utter a word. This diviner might not be able to figure anything out. "Master Diviner, Mr. Chen has agreed. We can begin now," Yu Buchuan said to the diviner. In truth, Yu Buchuan was also very curious about David's identity. Back when the three-life stone shattered, Yu Buchuan only knew that David's identity was far from simple, but he didn't know what it was. "Alright." The diviner nodded, then took out 3 copper coins. The diviner muttered something and tossed the 3 copper coins into the air. Instantly, the 3 copper coins gleamed brightly. The 3 copper coins hovered above David's head, their golden light shining upon him. David sat quietly, a faint smile on his face. The diviner slightly closed his eyes, rapidly pinching his fingers and mumbling under his breath. Soon, the 3 copper coins began to tremble, and the diviner's expression changed, his brows furrowing. Sweat beaded on the diviner's forehead, and his body began to shake. Boom! Suddenly, there was an explosion. The 3 copper coins above David's head exploded, turning to dust. Pfft! And the diviner spat out a mouthful of blood, his aura becoming extremely weak. The diviner opened his eyes and looked at David in terror, then slowly knelt down with his trembling body. Seeing the diviner kneel, Yu Buchuan was somewhat bewildered. "Master Diviner, could you figure out Mr. Chen's identity?" Yu Buchuan asked. The diviner shook his head. "Mr. Chen's identity is a true secret of heaven. I only attempted to spy on it briefly and suffered a backlash, nearly losing my life. Mr. Chen, I was rude. I hope Mr. Chen will not take offense." The diviner knelt before David, apologizing with utmost sincerity. Seeing this, Yu Buchuan was also shocked. Fortunately, he had only used the 3-life stone to check David's identity. If he had personally attempted divination on David, he might have lost his life. "Rise," David said calmly. The diviner stood up trembling. Before David, he was like a mouse seeing a cat. "You're the only one who found this place, so others don't know about it?" David asked the diviner. "They don't know. I didn't tell the others. I couldn't stand to see those bastards go back on their word and collude with evil cultivators, so I secretly led my people away. From now on, I will follow Mr. Chen. Whoever dares to disrespect Mr. Chen, I'll be the first to disagree." The diviner hastily distanced himself from Ling Wudao and the others. "Since that's the case, stay here a while longer and wait until Sect Master Yu recovers," David said flatly. "Everything is at Mr. Chen's arrangement." The diviner nodded. With the diviner's addition, David felt much more relaxed. Every day, the diviner took people to gather herbs and attend to David's daily needs. And David had more time to cultivate. With abundant resources, his strength improved rapidly. A week later, Yu Buchuan's body had fully recovered, and David led the group to continue their journey. During this time, the old man inside him had nagged him every day, long growing impatient. It also annoyed David with the nagging. Chapter 23:58. Not long after David and the others left, Ling Wudao and others arrived leading their men. Ling Wudao was accompanied by a disciple of the divination gang. This divination gang disciple had sent word to Ling Wudao and the others because the diviner had chosen to follow David and obey his orders. This puzzled some divination gang disciples, leading to a rebellion. "Master, there's no one in the cave." A Flying Star sect disciple who went in to check came out and said. "Damn it, did they catch wind of it?" Ling Wudao went into the cave to check himself and found that David and the others had just left. "They haven't been gone long. After them. That damn diviner has secretly betrayed us." Ling Wudao waved his hand, and everyone pursued David and the others. David and the others didn't know their whereabouts had already been discovered by Ling Wudao and the rest. They were still moving quickly according to the location marked on the treasure map. "Mr. Chen, where are we going?" Lu Rui asked curiously. David only focused on leading them onward but hadn't said what they were doing. "Ruier, we just need to listen to Mr. Chen. Don't ask too many questions." Yu Buchuan reprimanded Lu Rui. Lu Rui stuck out her tongue and lowered her head. David smiled and said, "It's fine. I promised someone I'd take him to a place, so we're heading there now." David didn't mention the treasure map, but the others didn't ask. After all, since they were following David, they trusted him completely. David and the others had been traveling for a day. After dark, they found a place to rest. But just as David and the others sat down to rest, a divination gang disciple hurried over and said to the diviner, "Master, senior brother is gone." "Gone? Where did he go?" The diviner was stunned. "Last night, senior brother said he had a stomachache and went to relieve himself, but then he didn't come back." The divination gang disciple said. "What?" The diviner was startled. "Why the hell are you only saying this now? I thought senior brother was ahead, so I didn't say anything." The divination gang disciple said with a terrified look. "Master diviner, perhaps your first disciple was delayed and fell behind. If not, send someone to look for him." Yu Buchuan said to the diviner. The diviner didn't speak but casually tossed a copper coin. Instantly, a bright light flashed in the air. Just as this bright light flickered, in the mid-air not far away, another bright light flashed simultaneously. Seeing the flickering light, the diviner frowned and said coldly, "Damn it, this bastard actually betrayed me." After speaking, the diviner looked at David and said, "Mr. Chen, we must leave quickly. Leng Wudao and the others are about to catch up. My senior apprentice betrayed me and brought Leng Wudao and the rest here." David frowned upon hearing this. He thought he had temporarily shaken off these people, but he hadn't expected to be followed again. "Then what should we do?" Yu Buchuan looked at David. Although Yu Buchuan had recovered now, and the diviner and the divination gang were on their side, facing the other sects and those from the Burning Heaven sect, it would still be difficult for David to contend unless he summoned those monsters again and unleashed another beast tide. David pondered for a moment and said, "We traveled all night and aren't far from the place I want to find. Mr. Chen, you go ahead. I will stay behind and personally kill this beast." The diviner said to David. "Let's go together. Staying behind won't help," David said. Chapter 23:59. Even if the diviner stayed behind with the divination gang, they would still never be a match for Leng Wudao and the others. The difference in strength was too great. After speaking, David broke off a branch and began drawing various patterns on the ground. As the patterns began to flicker, David laid down a magic array. The diviner couldn't help but be a little surprised when he saw how easily David arranged the magic array. He hadn't expected David's array skills to be so formidable. After setting up the magic array, David left quickly with everyone. Soon, Leng Wudao and the others arrived. Seeing the traces of them resting on the ground, a sneer appeared on Leng Wudao's face. "They can't run away." After speaking, Leng Wudao took the lead and led his men in pursuit. But they had only taken 2 steps when the ground suddenly trembled. Then, the surrounding trees seemed to come to life, spinning madly around Leng Wudao and the others, blocking their path. "Humph, a trivial magic array, what a joke trying to stop us." Leng Wudao snorted coldly, waved his palm, and an immense force swept forward like a tsunami. Rocks and trees turned to powder one after another, and soon the array was broken. However, David hadn't expected his array to trap Leng Wudao and the others. As long as the array could buy them some time, that was enough. After traveling all night, David brought Yu Buchuan and the others to the location marked on the treasure map. Looking at the bottomless ravine before him, David frowned slightly because he could clearly sense a dangerous aura emanating from within. This ravine was bottomless, stretching dozens of miles with no end in sight. Inside it was pitch black, like a passage leading to the abyss of hell. Moreover, the stone walls on both sides of the ravine were so smooth they didn't seem naturally formed at all, more like they'd been split open by a sword. "Mr. Chen, what is this place? Why do I feel so gloomy and terrifying?" Lu Rui asked David. I don't know either. David didn't even know what this place was, he only remembered it was marked on the treasure map. At that moment, a light flashed across David's chest, and then a transparent skull slowly appeared in midair. Seeing this, everyone was startled and became alert. Ha ha ha, we're finally here, here. The skull actually spoke. Mr. Chen, who is this? Yu Buchuan looked at the transparent skull and asked David. David shook his head. I don't know who he is. Hearing David's answer, Yu Buchuan and the diviner were speechless. So David didn't even know who the other party was, yet he'd brought him here. If the other party had ill intentions, wouldn't that be troublesome? The skull seemed to read everyone's thoughts and chuckled, there are countless treasures in this abyss. It depends on whether you dare to go down. After speaking, the skull flew into the abyss and was quickly swallowed by the darkness within. Now, David and Yu Buchuan exchanged glances, unsure what to do. David could clearly sense the dangerous atmosphere in the abyss, but he also knew that great opportunities often came with great dangers. Now it depended on whether they had the courage. As the saying goes, fortune favors the bold. Master Diviner, Sect Master Yu, what should we do? David knew that venturing into the abyss would be very dangerous, they might lose their lives, so he wanted to consult the diviner and Yu Buchuan for their opinions. Mr. Chen, we'll listen to you. Whatever you decide, we won't hesitate. Yes, Mr. Chen, just give the word. The diviner and Yu Buchuan said. Chapter 2360. David walked to the edge of the abyss, then looked down. Inside was only darkness, he couldn't see anything, but the gloomy aura made one shudder. A ray of golden light flashed across David's forehead. He wanted to use his spiritual sense to probe what was in the abyss, but unfortunately, as soon as his divine sense entered the abyss, it was instantly severed, unable to discern the situation inside. Mr. Chen, Leng Wudao and the others are about to catch up. The diviner walked up to David and whispered. David turned to look, then said to the diviner, Master Diviner, do you have any rune stones, jade pendants, or similar items? What do you need those for, Mr. Chen? The diviner asked, puzzled. There's too much Yin energy in this abyss. I'm afraid some people won't be able to resist it, so I need to refine some items to ward off Yin invasion and share them with everyone. David explained. Mr. Chen, I only have copper coins, will those work? The diviner took out a handful of copper coins and said. Yes. David glanced at them, then took the copper coins and began sealing dragon power into them. In just a few minutes, all the copper coins were refined and distributed to everyone. You must carry this copper coin on your person. Otherwise, your body may not withstand the erosion of Yin energy over time. David warned everyone. Everyone held the copper coins and felt that the cold coins now had a warmth, like a small stove, cozy in their hands. Everyone, be careful. Since we don't know what dangers lie in this abyss, don't get separated. Follow me closely. It's best if everyone finds a rope to tie yourselves together. Otherwise, I'm afraid if someone gets lost in this abyss, we won't be able to find them at all. David reminded. After speaking, David turned and jumped into the abyss. The others followed, no one was afraid. David only felt his body falling continuously, with a whistling wind in his ears. He didn't know how long he'd been falling, but when he felt his feet hit the ground, he knew he'd reached the bottom of the abyss. In David's palm, a faint spiritual fire burned, trying to provide a glimmer of light in the dark abyss. But the spiritual fire flickered and went out after only a moment. David tried several times, but the spiritual fire wouldn't burn here. This place is full of evil spirits, how could your spiritual fire possibly burn? An aged voice spoke, and David's surroundings instantly brightened. David saw the crystal skull emitting a dazzling white light, illuminating the area around him as brightly as day. You didn't leave? David was a little surprised. Clearly, the skull had fallen into the abyss earlier, why was it still here? I was waiting for you, to see if you had the courage to jump down. The skull opened its mouth and spoke in an aged voice. Soon, Yu Buchuan, the diviner, and the others also landed one after another. Though the abyss was deep, no one was injured. After all, they were already masters at the martial god level. This height wasn't difficult for them. However, the thick Yin energy made many people unbearable. Their bodies couldn't stop shivering. Fortunately, they had the copper coins David gave them, otherwise, someone would have already had Yin energy invade their body and turned into a rotten corpse. Yu Buchuan and the others were very puzzled when they saw the crystal skull there, emitting white light and illuminating the surroundings. Now that you've entered here, your fortune is up to you. I can't help you with anything other than lighting the way. The rest is up to you. The skull said slowly. Chapter 2361. Illuminating the path is enough. We'll proceed on our own. After speaking, David looked at Yu Buchuan and the others and said, Sect Master Yu, the dangerous aura in this abyss is very strong. You must be careful and don't get separated. Yu Buchuan nodded, and then everyone began to move forward. They didn't know how long they walked, but they still couldn't see any other path, just this straight passage, sloping downward into the ground. At this point, David and the others didn't know how many meters deep they had penetrated into the earth. But as they went deeper, the Yin energy grew stronger. Even with the copper coins David refined, some people began to have their minds invaded by Yin energy. Seeing this, David retrieved the copper coins from the crowd, then infused them with divine dragon power and inscribed spells onto each coin one by one. When everyone carried the copper coins on their persons again, they instantly felt much refreshed. The strength David displayed shocked the diviner more and more. Mr. Chen, we don't know how far or how long we've been walking. It's always been dead silent here, and we haven't encountered any danger. We just don't know when it will end. The diviner asked David. After all, this kind of dark environment, coupled with the gloomy aura, if they stayed in it too long, they'd probably go mad. Let's walk a bit farther and see. David didn't know when this walk would end either. But just as David finished speaking, the skull that had been illuminating their way suddenly dimmed. What's going on? Everyone's visions suddenly went dark, and they were all startled. But David's expression changed. Everyone, be careful. Just as David finished speaking, a gust of wind blew past, followed by chirping noises. It sounded like a flock of birds was flying toward them. Because there was no light, everyone could only feel the surrounding aura begin to surge, as if all the Yin energy had come to life. Afterward, countless eagle-beaked, sharp-clawed birds flew out from bursts of Yin energy and began attacking David and the others. David immediately activated the indestructible golden body. His entire body was covered with thick golden scales, making it impossible for those birds to harm him. But the others had it rough. Although everyone resisted desperately, forming wind walls with their powerful gusts, there were too many birds. People were constantly being pecked. While one peck wouldn't kill them, the densely packed birds left them drenched in blood and wailing constantly. Even the divination gang disciples with lower cultivation levels suffered. A bunch of annoying beasts. Yu Buchuan and the diviner attacked with all their might, and birds kept falling before them. But compared to the densely packed flock, these casualties meant little. David also wielded the dragon-slaying sword, swinging out sword beams one after another. Facing the small but numerous birds, everyone felt a sense of powerlessness. Screams grew more frequent, and more divination gang disciples fell. Seeing this, David put away the dragon-slaying sword. The fire phoenix mark on his forehead flashed, turning into bursts of golden light. A ball of golden light slowly rose into the air, then transformed into a huge fire phoenix, flapping its wings. David knew this fire phoenix was the lord of all monsters. When it appeared, these monsters should cower and even bow in submission. However, when the fire phoenix hovered above everyone's heads, illuminating the area, they realized there were no birds before them, and no bird corpses on the ground. There was nothing around, not a single one could be seen. Yet the fallen divination gang disciples, covered in blood, were real, proving they had indeed been attacked moments ago. What the hell is going on? The diviner and Yu Buchuan looked bewildered. David was also frowning at this moment. He didn't know what was happening. Could he have forced out the fire phoenix and scared away those monsters? But that was also impossible. Once the fire phoenix appeared, those birds vanished without a trace in an instant. It simply couldn't be. David wanted to ask the old man, but when he looked at the skull, he found the crystal skull had fallen to the ground, devoid of luster, as if it had lost some kind of power. He couldn't even hear the old man's voice. Helpless, David could only temporarily put away the skull and carefully reconsider the scene that had just occurred. The monsters we just encountered shouldn't be real monsters but Een energy. Now those monsters have transformed back into Een energy and filled our surroundings, so we can't find them at all. David spoke after thinking for a while. This was the only possibility now, otherwise, there was no way to explain where the densely packed birds had gone, or where the dead birds had disappeared to. Yes, Mr. Chen's analysis is likely correct. There shouldn't be any monsters that can survive in this environment. Yu Buchuan nodded, agreeing with David's viewpoint. At this time, the diviner looked at his disciples who had fallen to the ground, crying in pain, his face full of distress. But in this situation, there was no way to heal them. Disciples, I hope you don't blame your master. Rather than suffering like this, it's better to die quickly. Saying this, the diviner planned to kill the severely injured divination gang disciples. After all, they were in this kind of place now, it was impossible to bring these severely injured disciples along. And leaving these disciples here to fend for themselves would be even more cruel and painful. But when the diviner made his move, David stopped him. Mr. Chen, they're in so much pain. Why not give them relief? The diviner said with a sorrowful expression. Master Diviner, although their injuries are serious, they aren't fatal. They're all skin wounds and will heal soon. After speaking, David asked, whoever has medicinal herbs on them, take them out. The diviner looked at David with surprise. Mr. Chen, can you also heal the sick and save people? Are you an alchemist? Of course, Mr. Chen's alchemy skills are superb. That idiot Bao Yukuan from the medicine sect is nothing before Mr. Chen. Yu Buchuan said to the diviner. Hearing this, the diviner was even more shocked and couldn't help but look at David. At such a young age, David's methods astounded him time and again. Everyone quickly took out a bunch of medicinal herbs. After all, in this secret realm, medicinal herbs were the most abundant resource, so everyone had picked some and carried them along. David didn't waste words. He directly took out the Shinong cauldron from his storage ring and began refining pills. For David, this kind of serious skin trauma couldn't be easier. Soon, David refined an ointment and had the diviner apply it to the severely injured disciples. The wounds on the disciples' bodies actually healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. This miraculous effect shocked the diviner once more. Taking advantage of this time, I'll teach you an incantation to prevent excessive Een energy from affecting everyone's minds. After speaking, David passed on the heart-clearing mantra to everyone. David didn't know what would happen as they continued deeper. If the Een energy grew too strong, even the copper coins he refined might not protect their minds, so David transmitted the heart-clearing mantra to everyone. While reciting the incantation David taught, the diviner stood there dumbfounded, mouth agape, because only he knew that this heart-clearing mantra was a very advanced incantation, yet David taught it to others so casually. Chapter 2362. While David and the others were recovering, above the abyss, Ling Wudao and the others had already chased to this place. Looking at the bottomless abyss, Ling Wudao's face was full of solemnity. Are you saying David and the others are in this place? Ling Wudao looked at the diviner's senior disciple and asked. Master Leng, I suspect they are here. Since there's no one around, they must have gone down here, said the diviner's senior disciple. Tong Haiyang looked into the abyss, then sent a divine sense into it, only to find it severed instantly. He couldn't detect the situation inside at all. Then he picked up a stone and threw it into the abyss, but no sound was heard. This abyss is filled with heavy Een energy and is bottomless. Would David and the others really be so stupid as to jump in? Tong Haiyang was somewhat unconvinced. I think so too. To avoid our pursuit, it's impossible for them to jump directly into such an unfathomable abyss. Moreover, I sense a strong sense of danger in this abyss. Ling Wudao didn't believe Chen Ping and the others would jump. Hearing this, the diviner's disciple hurriedly said, "Master Leng, then David and the others must be in this area. No one can hide here. Since they aren't here, they must have jumped in. I can guarantee it." His senior disciple feared that Leng Wudao and the others wouldn't trust him. If they didn't trust him, he'd have no use value. He knew what the consequences would be for him. "Don't be nervous. I believe in your divination skills. Since you're the senior disciple of the diviner, you must have received his true teachings." Leng Wudao stepped forward and patted the senior disciple's shoulder. Seeing this, the diviner's disciple secretly sighed in relief. But before he could finish his breath, Leng Wudao directly pushed him into the abyss. "Since you said they jumped down, then go down and look for me." Leng Wudao looked at the diviner disciple's fallen figure and said with a cold smile, "Ah!" The diviner's senior disciple screamed, his face filled with terror. At this time, David and the others had finished recovering, and the injured divination gang disciples had healed. Just as they were about to set off again, they heard screams coming from above. Immediately after, a figure landed before them. Yu Buchuan and the diviner immediately leaped up when they saw the situation and intercepted the person. After the diviner's senior disciple landed on the ground, he was still glad to be alive when he saw two shadows attacking him. Once he saw who it was, he broke out in a cold sweat instantly and knelt down with a thud. "Master, Master!" The diviner's senior disciple knelt before the diviner. Seeing it was his senior disciple, the diviner flew into a rage instantly. "You traitor! You still have the face to call me master? Today, I'll clean up the house." After speaking, the diviner slapped his senior disciple. However, David stepped forward and grabbed the diviner's wrist. "Master Diviner, let's get things clear first before acting." The diviner said with a cold face, "Bastard, tell me, where are Leng Wudao and the others? Did they jump down too?" "No, they didn't dare to jump. They pushed me down to scout the way. Master, I was wrong. I was really wrong. Please forgive me just once." The diviner's disciple desperately begged for mercy. "It seems we must set off quickly. If those bastards jump down, we'll be in trouble." David didn't want to fight Leng Wudao and the others for now. He wanted to focus all his energy on exploring this abyss. Perhaps he'd gain some opportunities here. "Alright, let's go." After speaking, the diviner slapped his senior disciple's head without hesitation, killing him instantly. None of the crowd spared a glance but left quickly. Chapter 2363. "Mr. Chen, was the Shenong cauldron you used to refine the pills earlier?" Yu Buchuan asked David along the way. "Yes." David nodded. "I remember Mr. Chen lent the Shenong cauldron to Bao Yukuan. When did you get it back?" Yu Buchuan asked curiously. "Ha, that Shenong cauldron is an ancient alchemy cauldron. How could I have lent it to him so easily? And that Bao Yukuan is clearly a despicable borrower who never returns things. I don't trust him. What I gave him was just a fake," David said with a laugh. "Mr. Chen is clever. That Bao Yukuan is a despicable person, Mr. Chen is right," Yu Buchuan said admiringly. The group chatted while walking, and as they chatted, they also heightened their vigilance to prevent another incident. But everyone just kept walking obliquely downward like this, and nothing happened. However, as they continued to descend, the thick Yin energy, accompanied by gusts of wind, made David and the others feel as if they were in hell. Soon, a gate tens of meters high appeared before David and the others. The gate was tightly shut, directly blocking their path. Looking to both sides, there were smooth stone walls with no way around. It seemed if they wanted to proceed, they could only open the gate. David stepped forward and pushed, only to find the door was so heavy it couldn't be moved at all. "Let's push the door together with all our strength and see if we can open it," David said to the crowd. Hearing this, everyone hurried forward and then used all their might to push the door together. But the door didn't budge at all. Keep in mind that many of them were martial god-level powerhouses, and there was even a martial emperor among them. Together, they couldn't even push open a door. "Mr. Chen, this door is probably not opened by force, but requires a key. At this moment, the diviner pointed to a plum blossom-shaped groove on the door. David looked over and indeed found a plum blossom-shaped groove. But where are we going to find a key of that shape now? David was speechless for a moment. They didn't have a key at all, didn't even know what the key was, let alone where to find it. If there was no key, it seemed they had no way to enter. Mr. Chen, that skull seems familiar with this place. Maybe he knows where the key is. You can ask. The diviner reminded. Only then did David remember the skull. But the skull had lost its luster, and there was no response when he called out. David didn't know if the owner of the skull was still there. However, David still took out the skull from his storage ring. But when he did, he was stunned. He found that the originally crystal clear, transparent skull had now turned pitch black. And on the top of the skull, a plum blossom-shaped pattern was glowing with light. This light was especially conspicuous on the pitch-black skull. This. David stared at the skull in his hand, stunned. Mr. Chen, isn't this key the skull in your hand? Seeing this, the diviner said in shock. It's possible. David held the skull and gently approached the groove on the gate. Suddenly, a huge suction force directly sucked the skull up, and then the door creaked. Soon, the tens of meters high gate opened, and the skull returned to David's hands. At this moment, David was somewhat confused. If the door needed to be opened with the skull in his hand, then wasn't this place built by the owner of the skull? What exactly was going on? David couldn't figure it out. Who was the owner of this skull? Mr. Chen, look quickly. At that moment, Yu Buchuan let out an exclamation, shocking David out of his bewilderment. Mr. Chen, there are living creatures here. Could there be humans? Lu Xing asked curiously. I don't know. Anyway, this place is very weird. Everyone, just be careful. David said. After speaking, everyone cautiously followed David and slowly walked forward. Although they were careful, they still kept stepping on those bones. Because there were too many bones, they almost covered the entire valley. Even if you were careful, there was no way to avoid them. Crack, crack, crack. Suddenly, there were bursts of regular sounds. In this dead, silent valley, the sound was very piercing. David stopped abruptly and then looked around vigilantly. Everyone also panicked, wanting to know where the sound was coming from. But soon, they discovered that the cracking sound began to echo throughout the valley. Mr. Chen, look quickly. Lu Rui shouted, and then everyone saw the bones scattered on the ground move. They saw those white bones slowly float up and then reassemble into human-shaped skeletons. Gradually, more and more such human-shaped skeletons appeared. Almost all the bones on the ground stood up again. Thousands of skeletons surrounded David and the others. This sudden scene scared everyone into panic. What's going on? Yu Buchuan began to panic at this moment. Soon, tens of thousands of skeletons, weapons in hand, began to approach David and the others. David and the others couldn't retreat now. Facing the approaching skeletons, David waved his hand, and the dragon-slaying sword appeared in his grasp. Let's break out now. Don't go deeper. David planned to take Yu Buchuan and the others to charge out of the valley. They had just entered and encountered this situation. If they went deeper, who knew if there would be even more danger? Chapter 2364. After more than an hour, thousands of skeletons were beheaded by David. By then, the white bones in the area had long since disappeared, all turned to powder and blown away by the wind. David put away his 6 avatars and let out a long breath. Yu Buchuan, the diviner, and the others looked at David with astonishment in their eyes. They hadn't expected that David's phantom avatars would actually possess strength. Keep in mind that ordinary people's phantom avatars were only used to confuse the enemy and had no strength at all, but David's avatars had strength and could fight. David himself felt something different at this moment. When practicing swordsmanship, the spiritual power in his body couldn't sustain these avatars for such a long time. But now it had been an hour, and the avatars still hadn't dissipated, and the power in his body seemed inexhaustible. At this moment, David felt that there seemed to be a kind of power in his body, different from both spiritual power and dragon power. David's consciousness began to wander around his dantian, and only then did he notice a gray aura above his dantian. David tentatively tried to refine this aura, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't sink this aura into his dantian and refine it into spiritual power. Does this aura need to fuse with dragon power? David frowned slightly. Immediately afterward, David radiated divine dragon power, enveloping the aura, wanting to let this aura merge with the dragon power. But the two seemed somewhat repulsive. The dragon power couldn't even merge with the gray aura. What a strange aura. What the hell is this? David's face was serious. He didn't know if this aura would harm his body. Mr. Chen, are you alright? Seeing David motionless, Yu Buchuan called out, afraid David might be injured. Oh, I'm fine. Let's go. David responded with a slight smile. David hadn't reacted yet and didn't feel any discomfort, so he temporarily ignored the aura. So he led Yu Buchuan and the others deeper into the valley. But just after taking 2 steps, suddenly a violent gust of dark wind blew, and then a blurry figure slowly approached David and the others. At this moment, everyone became tense, because everyone could truly feel a dangerous aura from this figure. Ah! When the figure approached slowly and its face became clear, Lu Rui screamed in fright. They saw this figure wasn't human but a rotting corpse, with white bones exposed on its face, looking extremely terrifying. Even Yu Buchuan and the others were horrified when they suddenly saw such a rotting corpse. Who are you people? Get out of here quickly. This is a place to suppress demons. Trespassing without permission is a capital offense. The rotting corpse slowly opened its mouth and loudly reprimanded David and the others. At this moment, everyone was stunned. Shouldn't this be a secret realm with all kinds of treasures? Why had it suddenly become a place to suppress demons? And what was that demon? David was even more puzzled and frowned slightly. Shouldn't this be ruins with many treasures? We're just here to hunt for treasure. Humph, there are no treasures here. If you don't leave, then you'll never leave. The rotting corpse said angrily. Now David was in a dilemma. Clearly, the old man had said this place had treasures and could summon souls, allowing a return to the world of heaven and humanity. Why had everything changed now? If there were no treasures, David wouldn't have worked so hard to bring the skull here. Just as David was at a loss, there was a sudden tremor in the void, followed by another figure appearing. They saw this person was a white-haired old man, wearing a black cloak covered with skull patterns. Chapter 2365. But David could tell at a glance that the old man was just a spirit, not a real person. Little brother, I trust you've been well. The white-haired old man smiled at David. David was taken aback, then opened his eyes wide and looked at the old man before him in surprise, because the old man's voice was exactly the same as the skull's. You. David pointed at the old man, not knowing what to say for a moment. Ha ha ha, that crystal skull is mine. I'm the one who brought you here. The old man laughed heartily. Why did you do this? Clearly, your soul is here. Why did you lie to me, saying you needed to borrow this place to summon your soul so you could be resurrected in the heavenly human realm? David looked at the old man angrily and asked. He had desperately brought the old man's skull here, only to find out he'd been deceived. I didn't lie to you. Although my soul is here, I can't leave. I am the demon suppressed here. Only when the suppression here is broken can I return to the heavenly human realm. The old man explained truthfully. So in other words, you want me to save you? David said angrily. Why should I save you? What's in it for me? What benefits? Ha ha ha. I've already given you the benefits. Don't you feel it? The demon laughed. Feng Imo and the blood demon, if you save them, you should save me too. The demon said to David. Feng Imo? David was taken aback. He only knew that the blood demon had gone directly to the heavenly human realm because of the revived spiritual energy, but David didn't remember which wine demon he had saved. It's the old guy who taught you Holy Light Fist. He was suppressed by the demon suppressing tower, and you let him out. The demon explained. Only then did David remember that he had learned Holy Light Fist from the old man in the demon suppressing tower, and the old man was just a remnant soul. Could that old man also be a great demon? David asked in surprise. Because back then, he saw the old man in white robes, with kind eyebrows and gentle eyes. He didn't look like a great demon at all. Bah! He doesn't deserve to be called a great demon. A small demon suppressing tower suppressed him for hundreds of years. He really embarrasses us demons. The demon seemed to look down on that Fongimo. Aren't you trapped here yourself? David found it very funny. This demon was clearly suppressed here but still laughed at others. Is this the same? This is the Abyssal Valley, how can a small demon suppressing tower compare? And what's suppressed here is only my remnant soul. If my true body were here, I'd level this damn place straight to the underworld. The demon said arrogantly. Piss off, don't fucking brag here. The rotting corpse waved its hand, and the demon's soul was instantly flung far away. Seeing this, David said to the demon, how do I save you? And what benefits did you give me? Senior Fongimo taught me Holy Light Fist, and Senior Blood Demon saved my life. I've already given you the benefits, can't you feel it? The aura in your body is the Tao pattern evil chi. As long as you kill evil beings, the Tao pattern evil chi will grow stronger. When you cultivate 9 Tao patterns, no one in this world will be your match. Now, if you kill this half-rotten bastard, you can generate the first Tao pattern. Your strength can also increase greatly, and you can save me. Why wouldn't you do it? The demon said to David. Humph, you're bragging again, no one in the world your match? The rotting corpse snorted coldly, then slapped out, instantly dispersing the demon's soul. Kid, don't listen to his bragging. Leave now, and I'll spare your life. Otherwise, don't blame me for being rude. The rotting corpse threatened David. Chapter 23:66. Then what if I don't leave? David asked. If you don't leave, then you die. After speaking, the rotting corpse condensed energy at its fingertips, instantly transforming into ghosts with fangs and claws that rushed toward David and the others. Everyone was startled and assumed battle stances one after another. They hadn't expected the rotting corpse to attack as soon as it spoke. And those ghosts were extremely fast, arriving before them like lightning. But when everyone waved their weapons and attacked the ghosts, they found they couldn't harm them at all. These ghosts didn't hurt anyone, instead, they penetrated everyone's bodies at incredible speed. In an instant, everyone became sluggish. Weapons fell from their hands one after another, their eyes blank, as if they'd become corpses. David frowned. He could feel that after the ghost penetrated his body, it began to attack his consciousness. David thought it was an illusion and began reciting the heart-clearing mantra, but found it utterly useless. The ghost frantically assaulted David's consciousness. What a powerful technique! David frowned slightly. He hadn't expected this rotting corpse to directly attack a person's consciousness. Once consciousness was controlled, it was tantamount to killing the person, because the controlled person would obey all orders, even suicide. Even martial god and martial emperor level masters were controlled without any resistance, showing how powerful this rotting corpse was. Otherwise, it probably wouldn't be able to suppress a great demon like the demon. David's consciousness desperately resisted in his mind. His face was extremely pale, and cold sweat dripped from his forehead. David's body became stiff, standing motionless, only his brain working rapidly. This person's divine sense is so powerful, he's still resisting. The rotting corpse couldn't help but feel a little surprised when it saw David hadn't been controlled yet. But soon, David's eyes became vacant, his whole body sluggish, his aura changed, like a walking corpse. Seeing this, the rotting corpse grinned. No one can escape my attack. Since you killed my skeleton soldiers, you can serve as my soldiers and guard the gate. After speaking, the rotting corpse's figure slowly disappeared. But Yu Buchuan and the others obediently stood on both sides. Even David was no exception, he quietly walked to the side and stood there. However, at this moment, David was not under control. His consciousness was still desperately resisting. Just as David's consciousness was locked in a fierce struggle with the ghost in his sea of consciousness, suddenly a holy light shone. David suddenly felt extremely warm in his body, and the ghost let out a shrill scream. David looked up and found the light came from the wordless heavenly book. The wordless heavenly book, within David's sea of consciousness, radiated light at this moment, making the ghost scream incessantly. Seeing this, David instantly let his divine sense kill that ghost. David, having returned to normal, felt the light of the wordless heavenly book and found it somewhat unbelievable. He'd never thought the wordless heavenly book given by Mr. Sher would have such a purpose. Sect Master Yu. Master Diviner? David looked at the vacant Yubuchuan and Diviner, stepped forward, and called out twice, but they didn't respond at all. Lu Rui, Lu Xing. David looked at Lu Rui and Lu Xing. These two were also standing blankly, eyes unblinking, like sculptures. No matter how David called, these people didn't respond. It seems only by killing that bastard can they recover. David frowned slightly. Now, even if David didn't want to kill the rotting corpse, he couldn't just watch Yubuchuan and the others turn into puppets. Chapter 2367. David continued deeper into the valley. Soon, he saw something like an altar standing tall, and this altar emitted a faint light. The rotting corpse was guarding the altar. Beneath the altar, David could clearly hear screams. "What are you doing here? Hurry up and guard the gate." Seeing David had come here, the rotting corpse sharply ordered David. It thought David was already under its control. "Guard your mother." David suddenly erupted. A ball of golden brilliance lit up on the dragon-slaying sword in his hand, and he slashed toward the rotting corpse with a roar. The rotting corpse was taken aback. It hadn't expected David not to be under its control at all. The rotting corpse swung a fist to block, and an arm was neatly chopped off. But the rotting corpse showed no expression, as if the severed arm wasn't its own. David was taken aback when he saw this. He hadn't expected to cut off the rotting corpse's arms so easily. From this, it seemed the rotting corpse's strength wasn't very great, right? Just as David was stunned, the rotting corpse's severed arm rapidly regrew. Immediately after, it turned its palm, and evil energy condensed into arrow feathers. The arrow feathers were covered in runes, glowing with a faint light. Countless arrow feathers shot toward David, the sinister aura on them roaring, making a shrill, piercing sound. Seeing this, David vigorously swung the dragon-slaying sword in his hand, and a sword aura shot forth like a crescent moon. Whoosh! The sword aura spun constantly, and the arrow feathers shot by the rotting corpse were instantly crushed into powder. However, the rotting corpse didn't seem to care about missing the strike. Instead, its brow flashed, and a golden light instantly entered David's mind. It turned out the arrow feathers just now were merely to distract David, they had no power. The most powerful was this golden light. After the golden light entered David's mind, it immediately began to attack David's brain, trying to seize his consciousness. But at this moment, the wordless heavenly book in David's sea of consciousness emitted holy white light again, and David was bathed in this white light. Ah! The rotting corpse finally let out a scream and fell to the ground with a pained expression. David knew the opportunity had come. Holding the dragon-slaying sword, holy white light poured into the blade, and then he slashed out. Swish! This sword cut the rotting corpse in two. The rotting corpse stopped moving, and its entire body began to slowly rot, finally disappearing. Was it that easy? David couldn't believe it. How could he have killed this rotting corpse so easily? At this moment, David felt the gray aura in his body had changed. After immersing his consciousness, he found the gray aura had now turned into a bright mark. Is this the Tao pattern? David mobilized the Tao pattern, and then an immense force instantly surged from his body. Seeing this, David's face was full of surprise. It seemed the Yin demon hadn't lied to him. The power of this pattern was truly strong. Besides spiritual power and dragon power, David now had another kind of power. David didn't intend to use this power lightly, he wanted to keep it as his trump card. At a life-or-death juncture, when spiritual power and dragon power were exhausted, suddenly using this pattern power would have an unexpected effect. David was happy for a moment, then noticed the demon hadn't appeared. He couldn't help but feel a little strange. He had killed the rotting corpse himself, why hadn't the demon appeared? Hurry up and save me. That bastard is only strong in mental attacks, he has no real strength. I just asked you to save me. At this moment, the demon appeared. Chapter 23:68. Then what should I do? I've already killed this rotting corpse. Can't you escape? David asked. Put my skull on the altar. That way, the altar will be destroyed, and my soul will be saved. The demon said. David nodded, leaped up, and landed steadily on the altar. In the center of the altar was a crystal-clear skeleton, but this skeleton lacked a head. David took the skull from his storage ring and slowly placed it on the altar. Just as David placed the skull, the entire altar suddenly emitted a burst of dazzling light. Soon, the skeleton slowly disappeared within the light. And the demon's figure gradually became somewhat solid. Although it was still a soul, it now seemed almost indistinguishable from a real person. Ha ha ha, ha ha ha. This old man is finally free, finally free. When I find the bastards who framed our demon clan, who suppressed us, I'll definitely send them to the 18th level of hell, never to be reincarnated. The demon laughed wildly. David looked at the demon and was about to ask about his own origins, to ask if the demon knew who his father was, but found the altar beneath his feet shaking violently, about to collapse. This altar is about to collapse. Take your friends and leave here quickly. The undead beneath the altar are about to break free. I want to return to the heavenly human realm to rebuild my body. If fate allows, we'll meet again in the heavenly human realm. After speaking, the demon grabbed at the void with both hands. A spatial rift appeared, and then the demon's figure vanished into the spatial rift. Damn it, I saved you and you just leave. You don't even say thank you. David couldn't help but curse. But then, the altar began to collapse, and shrill screams began to emerge from beneath the altar, growing closer. Seeing this, David jumped down and quickly ran toward the valley exit. When David ran to the gate, Ubuchuan and the others had already regained consciousness. Because they couldn't find David, the group was still in a panic. Seeing David running out from deep in the valley, Ubuchuan hurried up to meet him. Mr. Chen, are you alright? What happened just now? No time to explain now. We need to get out of here right now, quickly. David said urgently. At that moment, gusts of wind blew past, and the sounds of ghostly wails and wolf howls continuously came from the valley, startling Ubuchuan and the others. David started fleeing toward the door. Ubuchuan and the others followed closely behind. And behind them were countless undead. These undead had various forms and different strengths, chasing David and the others desperately. But at this moment, above the abyss, Ling Wudao and the others were still waiting. Brother Leng, there's been no movement in this abyss for so long. I doubt Qin Ping entered it. It's filled with evil spirits here. Staying inside too long would probably disturb one's mind, let alone David and the others. I think we shouldn't waste time here. Let's look elsewhere. Tong Haiyang said to Ling Wudao. Ling Wudao nodded. He felt there was no one in this abyss who would enter a place like hell. Alright, we won't wait any longer. Let's withdraw. After speaking, Ling Wudao planned to leave. But at that moment, a whistling sound of sinister wind came from the abyss, and then they saw the evil spirits that had only been floating within the abyss start spraying out from it. Chapter 23:69. What's going on? Tong Haiyang was taken aback when he saw this. Ling Wudao didn't know what was happening, but when others saw this scene, they also gathered around one after another. Look, there are figures in the abyss. At that moment, someone shouted. In everyone's sight, the figure was getting closer and closer, then leaped out of the abyss. When he saw the crowd suddenly emerge from the abyss, Ling Wudao was stunned. David, you really went in here? Ling Wudao couldn't believe it. How had David and the others stayed inside for so long? When David, Yu Buchuan, and the others saw Leng Wudao, they were also stunned. They hadn't expected Leng Wudao and the others to still be waiting here. The two sides stared at each other for a moment, but soon murderous intent began to appear on everyone's faces. Damn it, I already told you, I didn't kill your son. And you're still waiting here. Seeing Leng Wudao pursuing him relentlessly, David couldn't help cursing. David, it's useless to say anything now. You must die. Leng Wudao's face was cold, then he looked at the diviner. Diviner, you traitor. You betrayed all of us. Do you want to die alongside David? Leng Wudao, I won't die. You're the ones who are going to die. Don't forget what this old man does, I've already divined your end. The diviner sneered. Fuck you. You really think you're some immortal fortune teller? If you were truly a half-immortal, you wouldn't need to stay in the hidden world. Leng Wudao spat hard, then said loudly, we must not let these people in front of us go. This time, we must eradicate them completely. All the resources here will belong to us. Everyone from the hidden world brandished their weapons. David, Yu Buchuan, and the others also drew their weapons one after another. The two sides were on the brink of battle. But in terms of strength, David and the others were far weaker. Whether in numbers or individual power, David and the others were at an absolute disadvantage. Sect Master Yu, Master Diviner, once the fight starts, you run away. Leng Wudao mainly wants to kill me, you don't need to die with me. David whispered to Yu Buchuan and the diviner. Mr. Chen, I won't run away. Even if I die, let's die together. Yu Buchuan said firmly. Mr. Chen, you are the chosen one. You won't die so easily. I believe in my own divination skills. The diviner knew David was no ordinary person, he couldn't die so easily. Kill them, Leng Wudao waved his hand, and everyone from the hidden world swarmed forward. But at that moment, the sound of ghostly wails and wolf howls suddenly came from within the abyss, followed by a breathtaking gust of wind. A large number of undead emerged from the abyss. Seeing this scene, Leng Wudao and the others were dumbfounded. Faced with the gust of wind and thousands of undead, no one from the hidden world dared to move. Run! David roared loudly and started running with Yu Buchuan and the others. Before Leng Wudao and the others could react, they were surrounded by the rushing undead, unable to chase David and the others. Suddenly, killing sounds erupted. Leng Wudao and the others fought the undead. And David and the others were also pursued by some undead, they could only kill and not retreat. Fortunately, after these undead escaped the abyss, they could all be killed. However, whenever David killed an undead, a wisp of power would enter his body. And so, killing and retreating, David and the others finally shook off the pursuit of the undead and Leng Wudao's group. After finding a relatively safe place, David and the others began to rest. And Leng Wudao and the others broke free with difficulty, escaping those undead. Damn it, why did these things suddenly appear? They let David get away for nothing. Leng Wudao cursed angrily. Chapter 2370. Well, our top priority now is to really get rid of these undead. I don't know where these bastards come from, but they can track us relentlessly. Tong Haiyang said. While talking, there was a burst of shouting, and then the scuffle began again. Some undead had actually caught up. Leng Wudao and the others had no choice but to flee again. At this time, David and the others were resting on a hill. This continuous fighting had left everyone very exhausted. Since entering the abyss, they hadn't rested properly, let alone cultivated or replenished themselves. Now everyone's energy was almost depleted. Although there were many resources here, they had no time to rest. What's more, those undead, like hounds, could follow the direction David and the others fled and quickly catch up. Looking at the weary crowd, David casually formed an array, enclosing an area of about 100 meters around them. Master Diviner, Sect Master Yu, you can rest here for now. I'll deal with those undead. Otherwise, these bastards will stick to us like glue. David said to the diviner and Yu Buchuan. Mr. Chen, those undead are very powerful. It might be very dangerous for you to deal with them alone. The diviner said. Yes, especially the armored undead, they're simply perverted. I spent a lot of effort to kill just one. Mr. Chen should rest with us. When we recover, we'll go together. Yu Buchuan also chimed in, hoping David wouldn't go alone. It's fine. Even if I encounter danger, I have enough ability to protect myself and escape. David smiled lightly. In truth, David had his own plans. He'd found that whenever he killed these undead, the power of the Dao pattern in his body grew stronger. If he killed more powerful undead, the Dao pattern power would increase even faster. Through the continuous fighting just now, the Dao pattern power in David's body had increased significantly. Maybe killing one or two more undead, and David's Dao pattern power could reach the second level. Mr. Chen, if you must go, let Xinger and Ruier accompany you. If they're really in danger, they can hold them off for a while. Yu Buchuan said to David. David knew Yu Buchuan feared he'd be in danger and meant well, so he couldn't refuse. He nodded and said, "All right. When we come back, we'll bring some medicinal herbs and refine a few pills. That can speed up your recovery." Yu Buchuan nodded, then looked at Lu Xing and Lu Rui and said, "Xinger, Ruier, you two stick close to Mr. Chen. Don't let him be in danger. If necessary, you know what to do, right?" The two nodded. "Master, don't worry. We won't let Mr. Chen be in danger. If needed, we'll blow ourselves up to buy Mr. Chen time. Don't worry, there's absolutely no danger." David looked confident, then left with Lu Xing and Lu Rui. But Yu Buchuan and the diviner, inside the array, began cultivating quickly to recover their strength. "Mr. Chen, you said those undead don't have inner cores. Even if you kill them, it's useless. Why do you still seek them out and insist on beheading them?" Lu Rui asked David, somewhat puzzled. David smiled. "These undead are useless to you, but they're of great use to me. Every time I kill an undead, my cultivation increases a bit." When Lu Xing and Lu Rui heard this, they were immediately surprised. It was the first time they'd heard that killing undead could improve one's cultivation. But since David said so, it must be true. David had no reason to lie to them. Chapter 2371. When you encounter the undead, you two don't do anything. Let me handle them alone. Only when I can't deal with them by myself will you two step in. David turned and said to Lu Xing and Lu Rui. The two nodded. Since killing the undead was cultivation for David, they would let David kill those undead. After walking for a while, the three of them saw a large group of undead erratically approaching. The leader was an undead wearing armor, and those following him should be all his soldiers. These undead were all dressed in ancient clothing and held spears in their hands, clearly an ancient army. This unit must have been killed, but their souls remained undying and eventually turned into undead. Seeing the sudden appearance of a large group of undead, both Lu Xing and Lu Rui's expressions changed a little. Only David's eyes were filled with excitement. Because there were so many undead, for David, they were a lot of resources, all potential Dao pattern power. You two, protect yourselves. After his instruction, David, holding the dragon-slaying sword, leaped up and charged straight into the group of undead. The armored undead held a long blade in its hand. Looking at David leaping forward, it waved the long blade. Attack! The undead behind it began to shout, holding their spears and rushing to meet David. In midair, David slashed out with the dragon-slaying sword in his hand, and a golden sword light streaked across the sky. Instantly, a large number of those undead in front of David were beheaded, and all the imperceptible Dao pattern powers entered David's body. David was overjoyed. Holding the dragon-slaying sword, he instantly charged into the chaotic army. At this moment, David was like a tiger descending a mountain, slashing at those undead. Although these had been soldiers in the past, now they were undead. David showed no mercy at all. Moreover, if these undead were killed, they could be reincarnated again, so they wouldn't have to remain in this world suffering as undead. Seeing David's bravery, Lu Xing and Lu Rui couldn't help but sigh with emotion. It hadn't been long, yet David had grown from the person they once looked down upon into someone they now couldn't hope to reach. When they first saw David, he still couldn't protect himself and was beaten to death by Tong Yugong. Perhaps this is talent. You and I will never be able to compare. Lu Xing sighed slightly. At this time, David became more and more excited the more he killed, without any trace of exhaustion. But while David was fighting vigorously, the armored undead quietly moved behind David with its long blade, planning to ambush him. Seeing this, Lu Xing and Lu Rui panicked. Damn it, this undead still has intelligence. Seeing the armored undead about to attack David, Lu Xing couldn't help cursing. It was too late to warn David, so Lu Xing and Lu Rui attacked the armored undead together. Lu Xing threw a punch, instantly enveloping the undead in a fist shadow. Lu Rui also drew the long sword from her body, cutting out a series of sword lights. Seeing this, the armored undead roared angrily. Sinister energy permeated its entire body, instantly dispelling the two people's attacks. Then the long blade in the undead's hand slashed, creating a shocking blade light. Lu Rui hastily blocked with the long sword in her hand but was directly sent flying. Seeing this, Lu Xing leaped up, gritted his teeth, and struck the undead fiercely with his huge fist. But the undead didn't move at all, instead, it punched Lu Xing away. This undead is too powerful, it's simply abnormal. Lu Xing stood up slowly, frowning tightly. Even Master struggled to behead such an undead. The two of us might not be a match at all. Lu Rui looked worried. Whether we're a match or not, we can't let him ambush Mr. Chen. Kill! Lu Xing leaped up again, followed by Lu Rui. The two attacked the armored undead simultaneously. Chapter 2372. When David heard the fighting sounds, he killed a few undead in front of him with a single sword. Looking back, he found Lu Xing and Lu Rui had already started fighting with the undead leader. Clearly, Lu Xing and Lu Rui were at a disadvantage, and both were injured to varying degrees. Seeing this, David instantly rushed up. The dragon-slaying sword in his hand emitted raging flames, and then he slashed out, striking fiercely on the undead's body. The flames instantly engulfed the undead leader, who let out roars as its body struggled continuously. Looking at the scene before him, David felt some reluctance. This was a general who died for his country. But even if David was reluctant, he couldn't help it. And this was a form of release for these undead. But as the fire burned, a sinister evil energy permeated the undead's body. The spiritual fire that could originally burn anything was instantly extinguished by this evil energy. The surrounding air seemed to freeze, and gusts of wind kept blowing, making David and the others feel as if they'd fallen into an ice cave. David frowned slightly. This evil energy is truly powerful. Seeing this, David erupted with the dragon power in his body and shot a sword glow from the dragon-slaying sword. The sword light instantly transformed into a golden dragon that flew out, hovered in the air, then burst out flames from its mouth and began attacking the undead leader. The murderous aura on the undead began to resist the spiritual fire spat by the golden dragon. The dragon power in David's body continued to erupt, and the flames from the golden dragon's mouth grew more intense. Slowly, the evil energy emitted by the undead began to weaken and finally started to burn. Soon, the undead leader fell silent. A speck of light slowly rose into the sky, then flew rapidly toward David. Mr. Chen, be careful. Lu Xing and Lu Rui didn't know what was happening. Suddenly seeing a speck of light shooting toward David, they hurriedly shielded him. But the speck of light penetrated both their bodies and finally entered David's. The Tao pattern power of this undead leader is really strong. David found the Tao pattern power in his body had become 2. When the Tao pattern power reached 2, David felt the spiritual power in his dantian constantly surging. Am I about to break through? David was taken aback for a moment, then quickly sat cross-legged on the spot and hurriedly began cultivating. What's wrong with Mr. Chen? Seeing this, Lu Xing was at a loss. He didn't understand what had happened to David. Why had he suddenly sat down and started cultivating? Mr. Chen is probably about to break through. At the moment of breakthrough, he suddenly started cultivating. We must protect Mr. Chen. Lu Rui seemed to understand and said to Lu Xing. Lu Xing nodded. They stood on either side of David, guarding him. Unknowingly, the two had been guarding David for a day and a night. David remained motionless, and Lu Xing and Lu Rui also stayed still, protecting David. At this moment, footsteps began to continuously approach David and the others, making Lu Xing and Lu Rui nervous. Because undead had no footsteps at all, if there were footsteps approaching, it meant someone was coming. But Lu Xing and Lu Rui didn't know who these people were and didn't dare to spread out their spiritual senses to avoid being directly discovered by the other party. Now Lu Xing and Lu Rui could only pray these people weren't Leng Wudao's group but were found by Yu Buchuan. But as the footsteps grew closer and the figures became clearly visible, Lu Xing and Lu Rui's hearts sank to the bottom. They saw this group of people was indeed Leng Wudao and his men. Lu Xing and Lu Rui's faces turned ashen, but the two still did not move, remaining guarding David's side. And Leng Wudao and the others were also very surprised when they saw David. They thought David should have escaped long ago, perhaps even left the secret realm. They hadn't expected him to still be here. Ha ha ha, it's really like finding something without even looking. I didn't expect to meet here. Leng Wudao laughed loudly. Chapter 2373. David still had his eyes closed at this moment, as if unaware of what was happening. And Lu Xing and Lu Rui looked nervously at Leng Wudao and his group. Their auras began to rise, their abdomens swelling like balls. They knew that relying on just the two of them to stop Leng Wudao's group would be like hitting a stone with an egg, simply impossible. So they planned from the very beginning to blow themselves up, using that to scare Leng Wudao from acting rashly. Leng Wudao, if you dare to touch Mr. Chen, we'll blow ourselves up, and we'll all die together. Lu Xing said loudly to Leng Wudao. Seeing Lu Xing and Lu Rui like that, Leng Wudao laughed coldly. You two little brats, do you think blowing yourselves up will scare me? If you two blow yourselves up, it's no different from setting off firecrackers. It won't hurt us at all. If you don't believe me, just try. We'd like to hear it. Leng Wudao sneered. Everyone else surrounded Lu Xing and Lu Rui with mocking smiles on their faces. Girl, you have lovely features and are quite pleasant. It's a pity to blow yourself up. Be obedient, and I promise you can live a good life. Yeah, with your looks, serving us would be better than dying. Bao Yukuan from the medicine sect looked at Lu Rui with lustful eyes. Seeing Bao Yukuan like that, Lu Rui flushed with anger, glaring at him, wishing she could bite him to death. Bao Yukuan, you insulted my junior sister. Today, I'll fight you to the death. Lu Xing was so enraged that he charged toward Bao Yukuan with a roar, planning to die together with him. Keep in mind that Lu Xing had always liked Lu Rui, and the two were a couple recognized by the Pure Yang sect. Now that the girl he liked was being humiliated like this, any man would be furious. But just as Lu Xing moved, Leng Wudao waved his hand, and a majestic aura instantly enveloped Lu Xing. This aura was like shackles, making Lu Xing unable to move. In front of me, you don't even have the right to move. You still want to blow yourself up and threaten me? Are you worthy? Leng Wudao looked at Lu Xing with disdain. This time, Lu Xing and Lu Rui's faces turned red, and they didn't know what to say. Given the absolute gap in strength, they didn't even have the qualifications to blow themselves up. Master Leng, leave the girl to me. You can deal with the rest. Bao Yukuan said to Leng Wudao. Alright, but Sect Master Bao should be considerate. There are many people here who are drooling and want a taste. Leng Wudao smiled charmingly. Don't worry. As long as she takes my ecstasy pill, one girl can satisfy all of us. After speaking, Bao Yukuan walked toward Lu Rui with a lewd smile. Bao Yukuan, I curse your ancestors' 18 generations. If you dare touch my junior sister, I won't let you go. Lu Xing widened his eyes, trembling with anger, and roared at Bao Yukuan. If you have the guts, kill me now. Kill me now. Kid, the more you curse, the more excited I get. In a moment, I'll let you see with your own eyes how your junior sister becomes a lustful girl. It's a pity your master Yu isn't here, or I'd let him see how his female disciple serves us. Ha ha ha. Bao Yukuan laughed, and the others also laughed wildly. Everyone seemed to be looking at their prey, staring at Lu Xing and Lu Rui. Lu Rui was furious and ashamed, but at this moment, she was also controlled by Leng Wudao's aura. She couldn't move at all and couldn't blow herself up. Bastards, you bunch of bastards! Even if I die, I won't let you succeed. As he spoke, Lu Rui opened her mouth, wanting to bite her tongue and kill herself. Chapter 2374. But before Lu Rui could bite her tongue, Bao Yuquan grabbed her chin, preventing her from biting her tongue and killing herself. If you want to die, you'll have to wait until we've had our fun. After speaking, Bao Yuquan was about to pick Lu Rui up. Boom! Just as Bao Yuquan was about to lift Lu Rui, a powerful gust of wind suddenly struck. Bao Yuquan couldn't dodge in time and was directly blown away. Bao Yuquan's body only stopped after smashing through more than a dozen trees. Blood overflowed from the corner of his mouth. Who is it? Leng Wudao frowned. At that, everyone turned pale with fright and looked around one after another, on alert. There were so many of them, yet they hadn't noticed anyone approaching, and with one strike, they'd sent Bao Yuquan flying. This showed the opponent must be a master. A bunch of grown men bullying a girl, are you shameless? I thought you were supposed to be righteous, but you're even worse than evil cultivators. A bunch of trash, beasts. Not far away, an old man in a gray cloth robe emerged. The moment the old man walked out, almost everyone felt pressure. Everyone's heart tightened. The old man's aura was so strong it made everyone a little scared. When Lu Xing and Lu Rui saw the old man, surprise appeared on their faces. Old Chu, save us! Save Mr. Chen! Lu Xing and Lu Rui shouted at the old man. This old man was Chu Yunchang from Jiaoyu Island, and Lu Xing and Lu Rui also knew him. With a light wave of Chu Yunchang's hand, the aura controlling Lu Xing and Lu Rui dissipated instantly. The two regained their freedom. Who are you, sir? Why do you want to interfere in our hidden world affairs? Leng Wudao asked Chu Yunchang. I am that old monster Chu Yunchang that your hidden world talks about. I don't care about your hidden world's shitty business, but if you want to deal with him, I disagree. Chu Yunchang pointed at David. When Chu Yunchang said he was that old monster, everyone was shocked. Because there was no one in the hidden world who didn't know of the old monster. Although no one had seen him or knew his name, everyone in the hidden world knew there was an old monster in the sea. This was also why people in the hidden world seldom took water routes, because none who went out by sea ever returned. So it's Senior Chu. This David killed my son. It's said that murder demands life, it's only natural for me to kill this David. I hope Senior Chu will not intervene. If Senior Chu is willing to ignore this, I will definitely send abundant resources to Senior Chu. Leng Wudao didn't want to make an enemy of Chu Yunchang, so he planned to give Chu Yunchang some resources so he wouldn't care about this matter. But after Leng Wudao finished speaking, Chu Yunchang smiled disdainfully. Don't talk about killing your son, even if he killed your mother, you can't touch Mr. Chen, or I'll send you to hell. Chu Yunchang's tone was very domineering, leaving no room for negotiation. What a joke, David was his palace master. Even if Chu Yunchang lost his life, it was impossible for Leng Wudao to touch David. Chu Yunchang's words stunned Leng Wudao for a moment. Then Leng Wudao's face turned extremely cold. Although he couldn't understand why Chu Yunchang wanted to protect David, being humiliated so severely in front of everyone made Leng Wudao somewhat unable to bear it. Besides, he wasn't alone here. Now that all sects in the hidden world were united, there was no need to fear Chu Yunchang. Old monster, I spoke with you politely, but you don't know what's good for you. Don't blame us for being rude. No matter how strong you are, you're only one person. Can you really handle all the sects of our hidden world? Today, we'll fight to the death and kill David. Leng Wudao's aura began to rise. Seeing this, the others also prepared to attack. Chapter 2375. For a moment, countless terrifying auras enveloped Chu Yunchang. Chu Yunchang frowned slightly. Although he wasn't afraid of these people, if he really took action, it would be difficult to protect David's safety. But at this moment, Chu Yunchang knew he couldn't show timidity. Otherwise, these people would rush at him like hungry wolves and tear him to pieces. Ha ha ha. Fight to the death? Are you worthy? In my eyes, you're no different from ants. Chu Yunchang laughed. From Chu Yunchang's body, an inaudible aura slowly rose, then this aura suddenly exploded in midair. For a time, winds surged, the entire sky darkened. Where they stood, the void constantly distorted, and spatial turbulence swept everywhere, like the end of the world. The aura exuded by Leng Wudao and the others was instantly defeated. Everyone felt the void tremble, looked at the doomsday-like sky, and a huge shadow shrouded their hearts. Transformation Realm. A Transformation Realm powerhouse. Tong Haiyang's eyes widened, full of fear. There really is a Transformation Realm powerhouse. Bao Yuquan trembled, his legs shaking uncontrollably. Once you enter the Transformation Realm, everything in the world is ants. No wonder he called us ants. Yao Qing turned pale. After speaking, he turned and fled. Because he knew that in front of a Transformation Realm powerhouse, a single casual palm from the other party could turn them into mincemeat. Before the opponent made a move, he had to run to survive. Yao Qing turned and fled, immediately prompting the others. Everyone scrambled for their lives and fled. At that moment, no one cared about anyone else, and no one talked about joining forces. All they thought about now was survival. At this moment, Leng Wudao stared blankly at Chu Yunchang before him, completely dumbfounded. And behind him, the people who were about to attack with him had already run away without a trace. Leng Wudao's legs trembled, his pants already wet. Cold sweat dripped from his forehead like rain. He was closest to Chu Yunchang and could truly feel the hellish fear emanating from Chu Yunchang. After a moment, Leng Wudao came to his senses, turned, and ran into the distance, soon disappearing. After everyone fled, the void slowly recovered, the sky brightened, and the terrifying aura vanished. Chu Yunchang stood quietly, expressionless. Old Chu, those bastards have been chasing Mr. Chen. Why didn't you kill them but let them go? Lu Xing asked Chu Yunchang, very puzzled. After all, Chu Yunchang was a Transformation Realm master. If Chu Yunchang had made a move just now, none of those people would have been able to flee. But just after Lu Xing finished speaking, Chu Yunchang frowned and spat out a mouthful of blood with a retch. Chu Yunchang's face was pale at this moment, and his aura became extremely weak. This time, Lu Xing and Lu Rui were frightened. Old Chu, what's wrong with you? Lu Xing and Lu Rui hurried forward to support Chu Yunchang. I'm fine. I'll just rest a bit. You two take good care of Mr. Chen. Those bastards probably won't come back soon. After speaking, Chu Yunchang slightly closed his eyes and began to regulate his breathing. Chu Yunchang hadn't reached the Transformation Realm at all. Just now, he'd forcibly stimulated his inner energy to create the aura of a Transformation Realm powerhouse. All that was just an illusion. Chu Yunchang couldn't actually do anything. The purpose was to scare Leng Wudao and the others away, not to kill them. But Chu Yunchang himself, forcibly mobilizing his inner strength, had severely damaged his internal organs. Lu Xing and Lu Rui looked nervously at Chu Yunchang and David. They could only hope David could break through quickly. If Leng Wudao and the others reacted and came back, they wouldn't be able to stop them. Chapter 2376. After a while, David's body began to emit a faint glow, and a powerful, terrifying aura emanated from David. David slowly opened his eyes. At this moment, David's eyes were deeper, giving an unfathomable feeling. Mr. Chen, have you broken through? Feeling the change in David's aura, Lu Xing and Lu Rui were overjoyed. David slowly got up, then nodded. Feeling the changes in his body, David finally showed a gleam of joy. He hadn't expected this Dao pattern power to be so formidable. He'd only generated 2 Dao pattern powers, yet his realm directly rose to 6th rank martial god, that is, the 6th rank distraction realm. If he cultivated the Dao pattern power to 9 patterns, wouldn't his realm defy heaven? Now, throughout the secret realm, undead were everywhere. And these undead were resources for David to cultivate Dao pattern power. Lu Xing, how long have I been cultivating? David asked Lu Xing. Mr. Chen, you've been cultivating for a day and a night. Leng Wudao led people here just now. If Mr. Chu hadn't suddenly appeared, we'd probably all be dead by now. Lu Xing said. Old Chu? David was taken aback for a moment, then noticed Chu Yunchang not far away, pale-faced with closed eyes. What happened? David knew Chu Yunchang's strength, Leng Wudao and the others were no match. But the Chu Yunchang before him had clearly suffered serious internal injuries. Mr. Chen, it's like this. Lu Rui described the scene where Chu Yunchang forcibly stimulated his inner energy to create a transformation realm illusion. If it hadn't been for the transformation realm display, Leng Wudao and the others wouldn't have been scared away at all. Upon hearing this, David immediately understood. He stepped forward and lightly placed a hand on Chu Yunchang's shoulder. A burst of spiritual power instantly penetrated Chu Yunchang's body, giving him a check. Chu Yunchang also opened his eyes at this time. Seeing David awake, he hurriedly rose and said, "Palace. Mr. Chen, you're awake. Old Chu, why did you do this? You didn't have to scare away Leng Wudao and the others like that. You could definitely fight them." David felt some guilt. If Chu Yunchang hadn't scared away Leng Wudao and the others like this, he could certainly have fought them. But at that time, he was cultivating and unconscious. Chu Yunchang wanted to fight and protect him, so clearly he couldn't do as he wished. Thus, he took the risk and forcibly created a transformation realm scene. "Mr. Chen, for you, losing my life doesn't matter," Chu Yunchang said with a faint smile. "Your internal organs are severely injured. Don't stimulate your inner energy for now. There are many herbs here. I'll pick some and refine a few pills to help you recover as soon as possible," David said to Chu Yunchang. "Thank you, Mr. Chen," Chu Yunchang nodded gratefully. "Mr. Chen, Mr. Chu, let's get out of here quickly. If that Leng Wudao reacts, he might come back soon." Lu Xing urged David and Chu Yunchang at that moment. David nodded, and they left quickly. At this time, Leng Wudao and the others had already run over 100 miles. The scene just now had scared the wits out of them. On a hillside, everyone stopped to catch their breath. Everyone looked at each other in dismay, and no one spoke. After all, when they fled just now, they didn't recognize their own relatives, no one cared about anyone else, and there was no cooperation. In the face of life and death, people are selfish, so no one said anything. In the end, Leng Wudao arrived slowly. Leng Wudao was covered in cold sweat, his pants soaked. He'd been so scared he'd pissed himself. Everyone looked at Leng Wudao's embarrassment, but no one made fun of him. After all, being scared into pissing yourself by a transformation realm master isn't shameful. Chapter 2377. Brother Leng, are you alright? Tong Haiyang stepped forward at this time and asked Leng Wudao with concern. But when they'd run away just now, Tong Haiyang hadn't even glanced at Leng Wudao. "I'm fine." Leng Wudao shook his head, his face full of frustration. Now that David was protected by a transformation realm master, his chance of killing David for revenge was impossible. "Since you're fine, let's change your clothes." Tong Haiyang pointed at Leng Wudao's pants. Leng Wudao looked down and only then realized he'd pissed himself. He'd been so scared he'd wet himself without even knowing it. Embarrassed and cold, he hurriedly found a place and changed his clothes. Damn it, what the hell? That old monster turned out to be a transformation realm master, and he's protecting that David. Who the hell is that David? Leng Wudao cursed angrily. I'm also wondering, since when was there a transformation realm master? But that old monster kills without batting an eye. It's really strange he just let us go and didn't attack us. Tong Haiyang also said, somewhat puzzled. Do you think that old monster was bluffing? Just now, with a casual wave of his hand, our group would have been wiped out. But he didn't do anything. Bao Yukuan stepped forward and said. It's very likely he was bluffing. But I know that even an 8th-rank martial emperor, by forcibly mobilizing energy, can still create the illusion of a transformation realm powerhouse. It's just an appearance and has no offensive power. At this moment, Yao Qing also walked over. Leng Wudao and Tong Haiyang glanced coldly at Yao Qing. Neither spoke, but Bao Yuquan said, "Yao Qing, you still have the face to say that? You were the fastest runner just now, scared like a rabbit. Aren't you the same? Don't talk about me. I think that old monster definitely hasn't reached the transformation realm. He was just trying to scare us," Yao Qing said. At this moment, everyone fell silent. After a while, Tong Haiyang said, "Yao Qing is probably right. I also find it very strange. That old monster was just bluffing to scare us away. Damn it, let's go back now. They must have run away long ago. They scared us. If I meet him again, I'll never let him go," Leng Wudao said, then was about to take people back. If it was really a bluff, then the old monster's internal organs should be injured by now, so we don't need to be afraid at all, Bao Yuquan said. Soon, everyone turned back. But they found David was no longer there. Damn it, we really were scared off. I'll never spare them. After them, Leng Wudao led people to chase David and the others. And after David and the others gathered the herbs, they went to join Yubuchuan. Everyone found a relatively hidden place. David refined some elixirs, then distributed them to Chu Yunchang, Yubuchuan, and the others so they could recover faster. The diviner dispatched divination gang disciples to set up warnings around them. As long as Leng Wudao and the others pursued here, they'd be discovered as quickly as possible. David often went out alone to hunt those undead to improve his Dao pattern power. Thus, while avoiding the pursuit of Leng Wudao and the others, David hunted undead to increase his Dao pattern power. In the blink of an eye, a few days passed. At the same time, in the dark abyss, cold mist constantly surged, and undead still crawled out of the abyss. Beneath the destroyed altar in the abyssal valley, screams and howls echoed continuously. This was the place with the strongest evil energy, and also where the undead continuously emerged. It was as if it connected to hell. The undead from hell crawled here through this passage. But in the deepest part, where undead kept pouring out, a figure sat quietly inside. Chapter 2378. Those undead all crawled around this figure, as if terrified. This figure emitted black light, its entire body as black as ink, as if wearing black armor. And within its body, a vortex began to spin, sucking all the surrounding evil energy into its body. Suddenly, the figure opened its eyes, which were full of cold light. The undead passing by seemed to sense something and all stopped moving, kneeling down. Looking at the kneeling undead, the figure slowly stood up, long black hair fluttering in the wind. This hell abyss is truly a good place. Pity I was summoned back so early. The figure slowly raised its head, revealing a delicate face. If David saw it, he'd definitely be surprised, because this was Ningji, who'd fought with him for a long time but suddenly disappeared. Ningji had been sent by Daning to the Hell Abyss to cultivate, but now he was going to be summoned back because, with the revival of spiritual energy, Ningji was also an indispensable part. Ningji felt the surging yin energy in his body, his eyes full of excitement. Ningji clenched his fists tightly, and raging breaths shot into the sky. David, I don't know if you miss me. If I meet you again, I'll let you taste the flavor of hell. At that time, the entire secular world will revere me. I am a demon cultivator. I am the flame demon body, a born devil. Ha ha ha, ha ha ha. Ningji laughed arrogantly, his voice echoing in the valley. And at his feet, a large number of undead knelt, trembling. Ningji slowly raised his right hand. The evil energy around him trembled, then swarmed toward Ningji. The originally dark abyss began to brighten at this moment. All that evil energy was sucked into Ningji's palm, forming a huge black vortex. Ningji glanced at the kneeling undead with a smile. Goodbye, my people. You are free. Go and kill everything you see. After speaking, Ningji slowly walked into the black vortex. Soon, his figure disappeared within it. After Ningji disappeared, those undead swarmed out of the abyss. But at this time in the secret realm, Ling Wudao and the others hadn't found David but were often harassed by undead, and it was miserable. It's so fucking strange. Why do these undead feel like they can't be killed? There are more and more. Ling Wudao cursed. He hadn't seen David's shadow in the past few days but had encountered several groups of undead. Although these undead weren't very powerful, they could be killed together. But this kind of endless fighting had already left them very exhausted, and disciples from every sect were injured. Most importantly, killing these undead brought them no benefit. If they were monsters, killing them could still yield beast cores. But these undead were like flies, very annoying, yet killing them was useless except for wasting energy. It seems although this secret realm has many resources, there are too many undead. It's not suitable to stay long. Tong Haiyang said after beheading an undead with one palm. If they set up camp here in the future, wouldn't they be annoyed to death by these endless undead? We've been harassed by the undead. I believe David isn't much better. Maybe they were killed by the undead long ago. Bao Yukuan said optimistically. But they had no idea that David longed to encounter the undead all day long, and the undead around them had been killed long ago. David had to travel hundreds of miles every day to find undead. For David, these undead were the best resources. Chapter 2379. What a great place, I really don't want to leave. David looked at the undead he'd beheaded and was filled with emotion. At this time, David already had 3 Dao pattern powers in his body and was about to reach 4. But it would become more difficult in the future. Just now, David beheaded an undead leader but found the Dao pattern power hadn't increased much. Clearly, to increase Dao pattern power in the future, he'd have to massacre undead. This area has been completely cleared. I need to move to another place. David was about to leave here and kill undead elsewhere. But not long after David left, a group of people appeared here. Yao Qing, I've been looking around for so long. Why doesn't this area seem to have any undead? Bao Yukuan asked Yao Qing. The undead here were just beheaded. It seems David and the others have left here. Yao Qing observed the surroundings and said. I said you're so mysterious, what resources are these undead? You made me accompany you to search everywhere. What kind of resources are these undead? Bao Yukuan asked, very displeased. Originally they were together, and when they encountered an army of undead, they could still support each other. But now Yao Qing had actually called him and chosen to leave Ling Wudao and the others. If Yao Qing hadn't promised a lot of resources, Bao Yukuan wouldn't have left with him. These undead are useless to you, but I found that after I kill undead, the energy in my body increases a little and my strength improves. This should be related to the evil arts I practice. I can absorb the evil energy of these undead, but you can't. Yao Qing said directly, hiding nothing from Bao Yukuan. Damn, why didn't you tell me about this good thing earlier? Can you teach me? When Bao Yukuan heard this, his eyes were full of envy. Killing these undead could improve one's realm strength, that would be too good. Not here. I'll teach you when I find a suitable place. After speaking, Yao Qing took Bao Yukuan and left. Many disciples of the Medicine sect and Burning Heaven sect followed behind. But just after Yao Qing and Bao Yukuan left, Ling Wudao and the others also rushed here. Looking at the backs of Yao Qing and the others, Ling Wudao's face was very gloomy. This Yao Qing really has something hidden from us. No wonder he wanted to separate from us. So these undead are all resources for him. Tong Haiyang said angrily. Let's go. Follow them. If we can learn the evil arts Yao Qing mentioned, then the countless undead here will become our best cultivation resources. Ling Wudao immediately followed after speaking. At this moment, David was constantly searching for undead. Any undead he found wouldn't even try to escape. Before he knew it, David walked back to the abyss again. Looking at the undead crawling out of the abyss, David's eyes suddenly lit up. Oh, why am I so stupid? I'm still looking for undead everywhere. There are countless undead in this abyss. Why don't I just slaughter them right here? David slapped his forehead, very annoyed he'd only just remembered this now. David held the dragon-slaying sword in his hand. The sword shot out light, and the undead crawling out were instantly turned to ashes. Then David jumped in without hesitation. David went down into the abyss. Looking at the densely packed undead, he couldn't help but be overjoyed. Ha ha ha, I've struck it rich. Facing the army of undead, David showed not the slightest timidity. He waved the dragon-slaying sword and charged forward. Under David's sword, those undead were instantly turned to powder, and countless Tao pattern powers swarmed into David's body. Happy. David fought harder and harder, battling all the way into the valley. Chapter 2380. But just as David was fighting with all his might, suddenly several auras approached David. David frowned. He could feel these weren't the auras of undead, someone was sneaking up on him. David slashed out with a backhand sword. The bright sword light directly sealed the entire valley. Boom! Accompanied by a loud noise, David's sword light collided fiercely with those several auras. The huge shock force made David stagger back repeatedly. I didn't expect you to be hiding here. Slowly, several figures stepped out from the dim black mist. Yao Qing stood at the front, and Bao Yukuan stood beside him. The disciples of the two sects stood neatly behind them. Seeing this, David frowned. He hadn't expected these guys to find this place. Now that David was blocked here, there was no possibility of escape. Ha ha ha, this is really a surprise. Originally, I just wanted to kill more undead, but I didn't expect to run into this kid. Bao Yukuan laughed out loud. When David heard this, he felt a little surprised. He didn't understand why Bao Yukuan and the others were looking for undead and wanted to kill more undead. Could it be? David narrowed his eyes slightly, then turned his attention to Yao Qing. Yao Qing was an evil cultivator. It seemed killing undead improved their cultivation, so they wanted to kill more undead. David, are you hiding here to escape our pursuit? Where's Yu Buchuan? And that old monster? Yao Qing asked David. But David didn't say a word. He kept looking around, searching for a way to escape. Stop talking nonsense with him. Just kill him. Hurry up and teach me your skills. Bao Yukuan couldn't wait to learn Yao Qing's evil arts. Saying that, Bao Yukuan was about to make a move but was stopped by Yao Qing. At this moment, only Yao Qing and Bao Yukuan were present. If Yu Buchuan, the diviner, and Chu Yunchang were all here, Yao Qing knew that with just their two sects, they'd be easily wiped out. Even though Chu Yunchang wasn't in the transformation realm, he was by no means someone they could handle. If those people were all in this abyss, Yao Qing would evacuate quickly and wouldn't do anything to David. David looked at Yao Qing like that and suddenly smiled coldly. Why are you two alone? What about Leng Wudao and the others? Master Leng and the others are still behind and will arrive soon. You're trapped here to die. Yao Qing snorted coldly. But David smiled, looked at Yao Qing, and said, I think you two must have separated from the other sects, right? If that's the case, then you two will die. After speaking, David's aura exploded. Yao Qing frowned. He hadn't expected to be able to deceive David. David had seen through it. David, even if there are only two of us, you're definitely not our opponent. I suspect Yu Buchuan and the old monster aren't here, right? Yao Qing asked David tentatively. They're deep in the valley. How could they not be here? David said. When Yao Qing heard this, he immediately burst out laughing. David, are you trying to lie to me? If you'd said they aren't here and tried to lure us into attacking you, I'd believe they're here. But now you say they're all here, is this to scare us away? We were scared away once before. This time, it's absolutely impossible. After speaking, Yao Qing raised his hand and grabbed at the void. Evil energy instantly condensed into a long spear in Yao Qing's hand. The evil energy on the spear was violent, and the entire valley's space trembled. Seeing this, David couldn't help frowning. He hadn't expected Yao Qing to be so sharp. When Bao Yukuan saw this, his aura also rose, and he assumed a stance. Two martial emperor masters, this made David feel pressure. Chapter 2381. And the two looked at David coldly, as if looking at prey. Go to hell. Bao Yuquan took the lead. He leaped up, his sharp claws tearing through the void, heading straight for David. Yao Qing wasn't idle either. The spear in his hand thrust forward, and countless spear lights enveloped David. Boom! The spear lights fell like rain, while David desperately resisted with the dragon-slaying sword, making constant metallic clashing sounds. Bao Yuquan's sharp claws instantly enveloped David's surroundings, making David's movement space extremely narrow. Thus, David could only face Yao Qing's countless spear lights. Explosion! Accompanied by Bao Yuquan's loud shout, the spear lights instantly burst with bright light. David jumped, wanting to escape this passive situation. But as soon as his body leaped up, Bao Yuquan's claw struck, instantly grabbing David's chest, leaving several gashes. If David's physical body hadn't been strong enough, this claw would probably have taken out David's internal organs. What a powerful body! Bao Yuquan couldn't help being surprised when he saw his claws failed to seriously injure David. Yao Qing brandished his spear and also frowned slightly. Everyone, attack together. Kill him first. Yao Qing knew that things could change. He was afraid if it took too long, Yu Buchuan and the others might come. Seeing this, many disciples of the Medicine Sect and the Burning Heavens Sect drew their weapons and charged at David to kill him. David saw the dragon power covering his entire body. The indestructible golden body activated, and golden rays of light shone out around him. This guy, if we don't kill him now, I'm afraid there'll be no chance in the future. Feeling the change in David's strength, Bao Yuquan couldn't help leaping up again. Yao Qing could also feel the threat from David, so he stabbed as soon as he raised his spear, soon tangling with David. Coupled with the disciples of the two sects constantly harassing David, David soon showed a disadvantage. The dragon-slaying sword in David's hand swung impenetrably, his brows tightly furrowed. David blocked Yao Qing's attack with a sword, while Bao Yuquan slapped David's back with a palm. Although David had a golden body, his internal organs still churned from the shock of that palm, blood surging up. Damn it, it looks like I'm going to end up here today. David couldn't help cursing. Yao Qing and Bao Yuquan grew anxious when they saw David's decline. With so many people, they still couldn't defeat David quickly. Go to hell! Yao Qing shouted loudly, and the spear in his hand shook in the air. Countless spear shadows appeared, followed by streaks of sharp energy shooting from the spear tip. This energy rolled in the air, transformed into thousands of sharp blades, and densely shot toward David. Bao Yuquan also yelled. His hands turned red, and raging flames burned. He extended both palms, and two flames shot straight at David. Boom! The two flames instantly drowned David, and those thousands of sharp blades kept striking David. David's body fell heavily from mid-air to the ground. Seeing this scene, Yao Qing and Bao Yuquan let out a long sigh of relief. That was really difficult, finally killed this guy. Yao Qing hadn't expected it to be so hard for the two of them to kill David together. With a wave of Bao Yuquan's palm, the flames on David were extinguished. That guy's sword is a treasure. It mustn't be damaged. After speaking, Bao Yuquan descended from mid-air to David's side. At this time, David's whole body was black as charcoal, long since losing that glittering golden and majestic appearance. The dragon-slaying sword was placed beside David. Though burned by the fire, the dragon-slaying sword remained as shiny as ever. Chapter 2382. The sword, it's truly a divine sword. Bao Yuquan bent down and picked up the dragon-slaying sword, greedy light in his eyes. But he didn't notice that David, lying blackened on the ground, slowly opened his eyes. Suddenly, David jumped up, directly shocking Bao Yuquan. Bao Yuquan instinctively stepped back, and the dragon-slaying sword in his hand slashed toward David. But as Bao Yuquan slashed, he realized the dragon-slaying sword seemed out of his control. When he swung the sword, the dragon-slaying sword unexpectedly dropped from his hand instantly. Then, reversing direction, it came straight toward Bao Yuquan. In the blink of an eye, Bao Yuquan's arm was instantly severed by the dragon-slaying sword. Ah! Bao Yukuan let out a scream and desperately retreated. The severed arm bled profusely, making Bao Yukuan's face extremely pale. Seeing this, Yao Qing picked up his spear and directly repelled the dragon-slaying sword. The dragon-slaying sword flew back into David's hands. Looking at his severed arm, Bao Yukuan took a handful of powder from his body and scattered it on the wound, instantly stopping the bleeding. And that severed arm was also picked up by his disciple. "Are you alright?" Yao Qing looked at Bao Yukuan and asked. To intimidate you, the two of them were grasshoppers on the same rope. If something happened to Bao Yukuan and he was left alone, it might be difficult to deal with David. Bao Yukuan shook his head. "I'm fine. I didn't expect this to be a spiritual sword with awakened consciousness. I was too careless." "Then what about your severed arm?" Yao Qing looked at Bao Yukuan's severed arm, blood still dripping. "I can reconnect it myself, but it'll take time. Kill David first, then I'll reconnect the arm." Bao Yukuan looked calm and composed. As the sect master of the medicine sect, it was just a severed arm. He had many ways to reconnect it, but reconnecting a severed arm took time. With David watching them eagerly now, he didn't have time to reconnect the arm. "Alright, then let's kill him together." Yao Qing nodded. At this moment, David held the dragon-slaying sword. The scorched black on his body slowly fell off, then the shining golden body reappeared. Seeing this, Yao Qing and Bao Yukuan frowned. Their attack just now hadn't harmed David. They'd thought that strike could kill David. However, although David didn't suffer serious injuries, the fight with Yao Qing and Bao Yukuan had already consumed a lot of his spiritual power. Even the dragon crystal in his body was beginning to dim, the dragon power was greatly depleted. If the fight continued like this, David knew even if he wasn't killed by the two, he'd eventually exhaust all his spiritual power and become a prisoner. It was obviously very difficult for David to deal with two martial emperor masters and dozens of disciples from both sects alone. David glanced at Yao Qing and Bao Yukuan, then leaped up and charged out of the valley. He didn't want to fight anymore. His only thought now was to escape. When Bao Yukuan and Yao Qing saw David running, they immediately understood David was at his limit. It's not that easy to run. Bao Yukuan's eyes were full of rage. He leaped to chase David. And Yao Qing also raised his spear, thrusting out repeatedly with the spear in his hand. Booming. For a moment, countless energies in the valley transformed into wind blades and shot toward David. David desperately dodged, wanting to rush out of the valley and quickly escape the abyss. But it was impossible for Yao Qing and Bao Yukuan to let him go. They chased after him. Just as David was about to rush out of the valley gate, he was successively intercepted by Bao Yukuan and Yao Qing. Fortunately, many undead were crawling out from the altar's black hole at this time, holding back the disciples of the medicine sect and the burning heaven sect. Otherwise, David would have been surrounded by now. Chapter 2383. You still want to escape? Today, this is your grave. Bao Yukuan said with a cold face. Two martial emperor masters shamelessly bullying a martial god like me together. David said to Bao Yukuan and Yao Qing. Humph, cut the crap. Eat my spear. Yao Qing didn't waste words. He directly thrust his spear, and a burst of brilliance erupted from the spear tip, extremely powerful. Seeing this, Bao Yukuan also attacked directly. Although he had only one arm left, claw shadows still enveloped David. Seeing this, David had no choice but to fight. The dragon-slaying sword in his hand burst with sword light, constantly resisting the two's attacks. However, with David's spiritual power depletion, he could clearly feel his movements were much slower now, and each sword's power was also weaker. Ha ha ha, you'd better surrender obediently. Your resistance is futile. Even if we can't kill you, we can exhaust you to death. Yao Qing had already noticed David's strength was almost drained. If you have the ability, exhaust me to death. David wouldn't be captured without a fight. He gritted his teeth. David still had Dao pattern power in his body, his trump card. He wouldn't use it lightly unless absolutely necessary. He needed to use the Dao pattern power to kill the opponent when they relaxed their guard. Boom! Suddenly, David was struck by Yao Qing's spear and fell heavily onto the cliff. The indestructible golden body on David also turned to powder at this moment, slowly disappearing. With a stooped body, David slowly rose with the dragon-slaying sword. It could be clearly felt that the breath in David's body was already very weak. Now even disciples from the two sects could easily kill David. Seeing this scene, Yao Qing and Bao Yuquan laughed. "Yao Qing, let me kill this David. I want to avenge my severed arm." Bao Yuquan looked coldly at David. He wanted to kill David himself to relieve the hatred in his heart. "Sect Master Bao, you should leave this David to me. This kid's strength can just be absorbed and refined by me. As long as you give me this David, I'll teach you the technique immediately and let you absorb power from the undead," Yao Qing said to Bao Yuquan. Bao Yuquan looked at David, then nodded and said, "All right, I'll leave this kid to you." Upon hearing this, the spear in Yao Qing's hand turned into black mist and dissipated. Then he slowly walked toward David. At this time, David was like a lamb waiting to be slaughtered before him, without any resistance. David tightly gripped the dragon-slaying sword in his hand, the Tao pattern power in his body shining faintly. Now David was waiting for Yao Qing to come before him, let down his guard, and deliver a fatal blow the moment he attacked. As long as Yao Qing was killed, Bao Yuquan would be nothing to worry about. After all, Bao Yuquan had already lost an arm. What fine material! It's just a pity. When I absorb your strength and refine your powerful body into a puppet, I'll have another general by my side. Yao Qing sneered, slowly walking toward David. At this moment, Yao Qing was completely unguarded, his expression relaxed and comfortable, his face filled with incomparable excitement. As long as he absorbed David's strength, his realm could improve here. Plus, turning David into a puppet, Yao Qing could secure a place among the many sects of the hidden world, and his words would start to carry weight. "David, don't blame me. If you want to blame someone, blame your own arrogance." Yao Qing came to David and slowly extended his hand. He didn't suppress David's aura because, in his view, David was now equivalent to a useless person, no need to control at all, and it was impossible for David to have the strength to resist anymore. Chapter 2384. David didn't say a word, but deep in his eyes, a gleam of coldness flickered, and David's hand holding the dragon-slaying sword tightened. "Stop!" Just as Yao Qing was about to place his hand on David's head, and David was about to fight back, a loud shout suddenly interrupted Yao Qing. Yao Qing hurriedly turned to look and found Ling Wudao and the others had rushed over. Seeing Ling Wudao and the others, Yao Qing was clearly a bit surprised, and David was also surprised. Originally, he'd planned to kill Yao Qing, then deal with Bao Yuquan. But now that Ling Wudao had brought people here, even if David had Tao pattern power in his body, it was impossible for David to be a match for all these people. Damn it, does heaven want to kill me? David couldn't help but curse secretly in his heart. "Master Ling, why are you here?" Yao Qing withdrew his hand after seeing Ling Wudao, then asked Ling Wudao. "Yao Qing, you took Bao Yuquan out of the group and came here. Do you have some scheme? Or is there some secret here you don't want us to know?" Ling Wudao asked Yao Qing with a sneer. "What are you saying, Master Ling? What secrets could there be here? We came here to track down this David. We also wanted to kill this David and avenge Master Ling's son. If there were too many people, I feared David would notice and scare him off." Yao Qing hurriedly began to explain, but everything he said was lies, because he didn't want Ling Wudao and the others to know his secret. "Yes, Yao Qing is right. We came here to pursue David. David has already been captured. For this, I even lost an arm. This kid wanted to run, but we stopped him in the end." Bao Yuquan also hurriedly followed Ling Wudao's explanation. "Bao Yuquan, don't think you can make excuses for leaving the group. I don't know what you're up to. Don't think we don't know what you've been doing. You've been searching for undead to kill all the way. Do you think we don't know? And you came here because undead are crawling out from this place. You came here just to kill more undead. It's just coincidence you ran into David, who was also hiding here, and this conflict occurred." You even said it was to avenge my son. Leng Wudao mercilessly exposed Yao Qing and Bao Yuquan. At this moment, Bao Yuquan and Yao Qing's expressions turned somewhat ugly. They knew if this matter were pursued, there'd be no good outcome. Perhaps the two sects would follow the example of the pure Yang sect and be isolated and wiped out in the end. Yao Qing, since you can improve your strength by beheading undead, why didn't you tell everyone? Having such a good technique but hiding it isn't sincere. We kindly invited you to take the pure Yang sect's place. Now it seems evil cultivators are evil cultivators, ungrateful wolves. Tong Haiyang said to Yao Qing. When Yao Qing heard this, his expression became extremely ugly. He immediately explained to Tong Haiyang, Master Tong, I was wrong in this. I'm willing to hand over my technique to everyone. Tong Haiyang smiled lightly, then looked at Leng Wudao and said, Brother Leng, since they admit their mistake, let's forget it. The most important thing now is to kill David and avenge your son. Leng Wudao nodded, then looked at David, who was breathing weakly. Can you escape today? Is there anyone else who can save you? No one I, Leng Wudao, want to kill can escape. Chapter 2385. I won't run, and I don't need anyone to save me. I'll just watch you talk big and be shameless. How many times have I escaped from you? Don't you have any idea? David used the dragon-slaying sword to support his body and said with a face full of disdain. This time, Leng Wudao was so angry, he hadn't expected David, nearly useless, to dare speak to him like this. Kid, you're so fucking stubborn. If I don't torture you to death today, I'm not human. Leng Wudao was furious, and raging breath enveloped David. At this moment, the Dao pattern power in David's body constantly shone, but David didn't erupt. David gritted his teeth, desperately resisting the tyrannical aura emanating from Leng Wudao, and said with disdain in his eyes, I heard someone pissed their pants because of a transformation realm master. Was that you? You only dare to be arrogant when you meet someone not as strong as you. You're no different from a pug. David constantly provoked Leng Wudao because when people are furious, their thinking becomes confused and they lose observational power. And what David wanted was to make Leng Wudao lose his keen observation ability. Otherwise, the Dao pattern power in David's body might be discovered by Leng Wudao. Kid, go to hell. Leng Wudao immediately became enraged upon hearing pissed pants. Then he punched David fiercely in the abdomen. David's body, like a leaf, was blasted away instantly. After flying hundreds of meters, David's body fell heavily, smashing a deep pit in the ground. David, who had fled to the valley mouth, was beaten back at this moment. Ugh! David put his hands on the ground and suddenly spewed a mouthful of blood. At this time, David's forehead was covered in cold sweat, and his internal organs were in unbearable pain. Although David's physical body was already very strong, he was still injured by Leng Wudao's furious punch. If David hadn't burst with Dao pattern power at the moment of Leng Wudao's attack, his life might have been taken by that punch. But at this moment, Leng Wudao and the others saw David wasn't dead and stood up supporting himself with the dragon-slaying sword. They were all so shocked they were speechless. This guy, isn't his body too perverted? What is this guy's identity? Could it be he can't be beaten to death? It's strange, so strange. Everyone looked at David, who got up and started talking. At this moment, Leng Wudao's face was so gloomy. David was almost useless, yet his punch failed to kill David. In front of so many people from the hidden world, Leng Wudao felt ashamed. It was embarrassing enough that he'd pissed his pants, but this time it was embarrassing again. Is that all the strength you have? Just tickles me. David wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, then taunted Leng Wudao. Hearing David's ridicule, Leng Wudao was about to go mad with anger. His hair stood on end, and his clothes fluttered without wind. I'll kill you. I'll kill you. I'll tear you to pieces. Leng Wudao roared, and in a blink, he was before David. Immediately afterward, bursts of golden light erupted from Leng Wudao's fist, dazzling like the sun. Then this golden light struck David fiercely. David didn't have much, just looked around with his eyes. When this fierce punch hit David, David's body flew backward again. This time, the flying distance was farther. But while David's body was still in the air, David erupted with all his Tao pattern power. David's body shone with starlight. David was surrounded by a powerful breath, then flew into the distance. Chapter 2386. Damn it, I've been fooled. This kid actually still has strength. Seeing this, Leng Wudao yelled that it was bad and hurriedly leaped to pursue. Seeing this, the others also started to chase. Now they knew David had deliberately angered Leng Wudao earlier, then used the power of Leng Wudao's punch to escape. David had planned it long ago. David desperately fled in front, and Leng Wudao led his people to chase desperately behind. Although the Tao pattern power had erupted, David still felt his head swelling, as if about to faint. Can't sleep, definitely can't sleep. David bit the tip of his tongue, trying to keep himself awake. But soon, David had already fled to the end of the valley. At the valley's end, where the altar was destroyed, there was a bottomless, extremely dark hole. Countless undead were still crawling out of the hole. After discovering David, they swung their blades and slashed at him. But David didn't have the mind to fight these undead, so he dodged. At this time, Leng Wudao led everyone in pursuit. Seeing David had nowhere to escape, Leng Wudao breathed a sigh of relief. If David escaped this time, he might become everyone's laughingstock in the future. The undead saw more people arriving and began attacking one after another. Tong Haiyang led people to kill those undead, while Leng Wudao stared at David, sneering, "Kid, I almost believed your lies. But now I see where you'll escape to. I said you can't kill me. You definitely can't kill me. I won't let you kill me." David raised the corner of his mouth slightly, then suddenly jumped, heading directly toward the deep hole where undead crawled out, and jumped into the hole. Seeing this, Leng Wudao was stunned for a moment. He hadn't expected David to jump into that deep hole. Leng Wudao ran forward, only to see the sinister aura emanating from the deep cave was many times stronger than that in the valley. And there were shrill roars everywhere inside, and undead constantly emerged, which made Leng Wudao somewhat scared. He didn't know if he should jump down too and kill David personally. But this deep cave was an unknown world, and the evil energy inside was too strong. Leng Wudao was a bit scared. At this time, Tong Haiyang came over. "What? Did David jump?" Leng Wudao nodded. "Yes." Tong Haiyang glanced inside and said, "There's so much evil energy in here, and countless undead. David's probably dead if he jumped down. Let's leave here first, then guard the valley entrance. If David's still alive, there's only one exit. We can't keep killing these undead. Once we learn Yao Qing's technique, these undead will be the best resources." Tong Haiyang reminded Leng Wudao, afraid he'd lose his mind for revenge. When Leng Wudao heard this, he immediately realized. Seeing the many undead that had been beheaded, his heart ached. "Get out, let's get out of here quickly!" Leng Wudao shouted, and everyone quickly withdrew. After retreating to the valley mouth, Leng Wudao sent people to tightly close the tens of meters high valley gate to prevent the undead from running out. They had to learn the technique first. After learning it, they'd open the gate and kill those undead. "Yao Qing, here's your chance to make amends. Teach us." Leng Wudao said to Yao Qing. "All right." Yao Qing nodded, not daring to say anything, and began teaching the technique to everyone. In the abyss for a while, Leng Wudao and everyone in the hidden world began learning the evil cultivation method from Yao Qing. Chapter 2387. In the deep cave of the valley. David's body was slowly falling. At this time, David felt the thick evil energy around him, and his mind grew increasingly blurred. He seemed to feel something passing by him, like those undead, yet not quite. If they were those undead, why didn't they attack him? Before he knew it, David lost consciousness. His body kept falling, but seemed supported by something, falling very slowly. When David's body finally touched a circular platform and stopped falling, countless undead surrounded him. But after glancing at David, they didn't attack and instead crawled out of the cave. David just lay there quietly. Countless undead passed by, and none attacked him. He didn't know how long it took, but David slowly opened his eyes. What met his eyes, besides darkness, were densely packed undead. Those undead emitted a faint white light in this deep hole, then floated upward one by one. Seeing so many undead, David was terrified. He held the dragon-slaying sword in his hand, vigilant all around. Only a moment later, David found these undead seemed unable to see him and didn't attack him. This time, David finally breathed a sigh of relief, then began to examine the surrounding environment. Because it was pitch black all around, David couldn't see anything clearly, but he could clearly see the circular platform beneath his feet. David turned around on it and found the circular platform's diameter was 100 meters, very huge. But there seemed to be space beneath the platform, and such a large circular platform seemed suspended in mid-air. What exactly is this place? David remembered jumping into the deep hole beneath the altar but hadn't expected such a large space in the deep hole. David released his consciousness to investigate, but with a thought, he realized the spiritual power in his dantian was already empty. Helpless, David could only sit cross-legged and begin recovering his strength. Fortunately, there was strong evil energy here. For David, these were no different from spiritual energy and could quickly restore him. But David had just activated the concentration art when he couldn't help frowning. Ha! Why does it seem Ningji's aura is here? David was very surprised. How could Ningji's aura be in this place? David couldn't remember how long it had been since he'd seen Ningji, and David didn't even know whether Ningji was alive or dead. But now Ningji's aura suddenly appeared here, instantly making David think of him again. However, David was only surprised for a moment, then quickly entered a state of cultivation. He didn't believe Ningji would appear here. After all, he'd opened this place inadvertently, and Ningji might not be here. Just as David was rapidly recovering through cultivation, Yu Buchuan and Chu Yunchang in the secret realm were already very anxious. Yu Buchuan and the others had already recovered, but David hadn't been seen yet, which made everyone very anxious. They were all afraid David had encountered Ling Wudao and the others. That would be a disaster. David alone would never be a match for so many of Ling Wudao's people. If they met, David would definitely die. How is it? Did you find Mr. Chen? Chu Yunchang asked anxiously, frowning. Yu Buchuan shook his head. I didn't find him. I searched 200 miles this time but still didn't find Mr. Chen. Senior Chu, I didn't find him either. No news. The diviner also shook his head and said. Hearing this, Chu Yunchang had a bad premonition in his heart. If David were fine, he would never stay away so many days without returning. He should know they'd worry about him. Since he hadn't returned, he must be in danger. Let's search separately now. After 3 days, whether we find him or not, we'll all gather at this place. After speaking, Chu Yunchang vanished in a flash. Yu Buchuan and the diviner also parted ways, each searching in one direction. Chapter 2388. In the deep cave, because there was abundant evil energy, David's recovery speed was very fast. After David fully recovered, he slowly opened his eyes. But at this moment, he was still on the circular platform. Now David didn't know if Ling Wudao and the others had left. He didn't dare to go up rashly. Then David came to the edge of the circular platform and looked down. It was pitch black, and he couldn't see how deep it was. Is it really hell down there? David looked down, curiosity constantly urging him to go down and look. At this time, undead were still emerging, and these undead were clearly emerging from a lower place. So many undead, what's down there? David's expression was curious. Gritting his teeth one last time, he actually jumped off the circular platform. This time, as soon as David jumped off the circular platform, he felt a suffocating oppression. The pressure in the entire cave radiated continuously, and David's falling speed became even slower. It was as if something was holding David up and didn't want him to fall. David could only sink his chi into his dantian and use a heavy pendant, making his body fall a little faster. However, as David's body descended, the pressure grew stronger and stronger, as if to crush him. If David's body hadn't been strong enough, and the indestructible golden body hadn't been activated, David would have already turned into a puddle of flesh by now. He didn't know how long he'd been falling, but David suddenly felt his body lighten, then his body fell rapidly like a meteorite. David hurriedly lifted his breath and stabilized his figure. With the accelerated falling speed, his vision began to become extremely bright. Boom! With a loud noise, David's body hit the ground heavily, smashing a deep pit into the ground. David calmed down for a while, then slowly climbed out of the deep pit. But when David climbed out, he was stunned. He saw towering mountains all around. The entire sky was also gray. Countless skeletons lay on the ground, and countless weapons were scattered everywhere. A few black crows kept circling overhead. The scene was lifeless, the surroundings desolate. Except for a few crows, no living thing could be seen at all, not even a blade of grass. What is this place? An ancient battlefield? David was shocked. He didn't understand why, when he was clearly in that dark cave, he'd suddenly come to this place. Could it be there was a teleportation array in that hole that teleported him here? David couldn't figure it out, and he didn't even know where this place was. Even when he extended his spiritual sense to the extreme, David couldn't detect other auras. But now that he was here, David still intended to wander around. If he could get to this place somehow, there was a possibility he'd have an adventure here. David saw on the countless bones faint rays of light flickering, then the undead on the bones appeared and floated into the air. David looked up following the undead figures and found there was a black hole in the sky. The black hole seemed to still be spinning, devouring everything near it. Is this where I fell from? David looked at the black hole in the sky and seemed to understand he should have fallen from this black hole, and these undead also entered that valley through this black hole. A large number of undead emerged, then floated into the sky and were swallowed by the inner black hole. Seeing this, David held the dragon-slaying sword in his hand and slashed out. With so many undead, he could kill more than a dozen with one slash. This way, he could gather more Tao pattern power. But when David slashed at those undead, he found his sword glow instantly passed through them and didn't cause any harm. Chapter 2389. Those undead also ignored David, as if David didn't exist. This time, David was a little dumbfounded. Why couldn't he attack those undead in this place? After trying several times in a row, David gave up. Holding the dragon-slaying sword, David walked blankly in the area surrounded by mountains. The bones on the ground emitted bursts of cold air. David didn't know what happened here, so many people died. However, as David kept walking forward, a pair of huge white bones soon appeared before David. Seeing this, David couldn't help but gasp. He saw this skeleton was over 10 meters tall and still intact, but this skeleton's posture was somewhat strange. It knelt on the ground. The entire skeleton was crystal clear, shining with luster, and bursts of pressure emanated from it. David was very surprised. Except that this skeleton's body was much larger than the Yin demon's, the bones were all crystal clear, almost exactly the same. However, David had never seen a person over 10 meters tall. Even if the other was kneeling on the ground, to see the whole skeleton, David still had to look up. But when David looked up, he found that at the skull's position, an arrow that was also crystal clear was inserted between the skull's eyebrows. If David hadn't looked carefully, he wouldn't have noticed it at all. David slowly floated his body up until level with the skull. Only then did David realize the crystal clear arrow was only a few inches long and had struck the center of the skull's eyebrows. Clearly, the owner of this skeleton was killed by this arrow. David curiously grabbed the arrow. He wanted to pull it out to see if it was some kind of treasure. But when David grabbed the arrow, he suddenly felt a dangerous aura. Then the arrow burst into bright light, and a huge surge of aura directly blasted David away. David's body was instantly sent flying tens of meters, then struck the ground fiercely. David could only feel his internal organs churning continuously, and blood overflowed from the corner of his mouth. Keep in mind that David's body was extremely strong now, and he even had indestructible golden body protection. Even a martial emperor powerhouse might not be able to injure David like this. But just now, the aura emanating from the arrow almost killed David here. Taking a deep breath, David stared fixedly at the arrow. Something capable of erupting with such power was definitely not an ordinary item, perhaps a divine arrow. David mobilized his spiritual power, then burst with aura to resist the pressure emitted by the arrow, and again went toward the arrow. David wanted to pull out the arrow and have a look. But just after David approached, he was knocked away by a huge aura again. David tried several times in a row but couldn't get close to that arrow. Even when David erupted dragon power, he still couldn't get close. The burst of aura from this arrow directly suppressed both David's spiritual power and dragon power. At this time, David's face was somewhat pale, and the corners of his mouth were full of blood. "Damn it, I don't believe it. I can't even pull out an arrow." David's temper was also aroused. But when David was about to try again, he suddenly found the Tao pattern power in his body shining. David hastily erupted the Tao pattern power. And just after the Tao pattern power in David's body erupted, the arrow inserted in the skull also emitted bursts of light and even trembled. Could it be this Tao pattern power can suppress this arrow? David continued erupting Tao pattern power and began approaching the arrow. Chapter 2390. Sure enough, the arrow didn't exude a strong aura this time. But just when David was about to take the arrow into his hands, the arrow suddenly trembled more violently, finally breaking free from the skull in an instant and flying away. With the arrow's detachment, the over 10-meter skeleton also collapsed. "Don't run." David didn't care about the collapsed skeleton but directly chased after the arrow. The arrow transformed into a streak of light and flew straight toward a peak on one side, while David tried his best to pursue it. When finally reaching the peak, the arrow suddenly slowed down, and David stepped forward to grab it. As soon as the arrow was in his hands, there was a burst of chill, and David was almost thrown off. Looking at the crystal-clear arrow and the chill in his hands, it seemed the arrow was made of ice. "There doesn't seem to be anything special about this arrow," David observed carefully. Apart from the arrow being cold, there seemed nothing special about it. Even when David injected Tao pattern power, this arrow didn't change at all. But when David was wondering, suddenly the ground trembled violently, followed by roars. David hurriedly turned his head and looked down the mountain. He found countless undead under the mountain. Among them was an undead over 10 meters tall. David could tell at a glance this undead came from the huge skeleton. The chill and roar of the countless undead made David's heart tremble. He didn't understand why the undead, who were very quiet just now and all floated into the air, became irritable now. David looked toward the sky and was instantly dumbfounded. At some point, the huge black hole in the sky had disappeared. These undead had nowhere to go, so they started becoming irritable. And David himself didn't know where to go now. The black hole was gone. How could he go back? This time, David was in a bit of trouble. Would he be trapped in this place forever? This place was simply a place where birds don't shit, and David didn't even know where it was. Just when David was at a loss, those undead started climbing toward the mountain. They seemed to be attacking David. David hurriedly put away the arrow, then held the dragon-slaying sword in his hand, ready to fight to the death with these undead. But just when those undead were about to reach the mountaintop, a dazzling golden light suddenly exploded. All the undead who'd climbed the mountain turned into nothingness at this moment and disappeared without a trace. Seeing this, the undead behind all stopped. David hurriedly looked toward the place emitting golden light and found a bow embedded in a stone wall. This bow was buried very deep in the stone wall, and only part of it was still exposed. The dazzling golden light just now came from this bow. Seeing this, David hurried forward and cleared the surrounding stones with the dragon-slaying sword. Soon, the bow revealed its full view. Looking at the very delicate bow before him, emitting bursts of golden light, David reached out and took it. When the bow was in David's hand, there were bursts of buzzing sounds, and the Tao pattern power in David's body also began to boil. Although David didn't know what level of weapon this curved bow was, it was definitely a good thing. The golden light and aura it erupted just now were by no means what ordinary weapons could produce. David carefully looked at the curved bow in his hand and soon found the words, "God King Bow," on the bow's handle. Is this bow called the God King Bow? David looked at the God King bow and couldn't put it down. Chapter 23:91. David checked the God King bow in his hand, then curiously assumed a posture and pulled the bowstring hard. But no matter how hard David tried, the bowstring didn't move at all. How could this be? David was stunned. Afterward, David erupted with Tao pattern power. Strands of Tao pattern power entered the God King bow, and the God King bow finally had a slight reaction. David pulled the bowstring, and the God King bow's bowstring trembled slightly. But it was just trembling, it wasn't drawn by David. But just from trying to draw the God King bow, David was shocked to find the Tao pattern power in his body was exhausted. David was dumbfounded. He'd accumulated the power of 2 Tao patterns with great difficulty. In the end, he hadn't even drawn the God King bow but had consumed the power of 2 Tao patterns. Was this too fucking outrageous? How do you use this thing? David looked at the God King bow in his hand and finally threw it into his storage ring. Looking at the disappeared black hole and the densely packed undead under the mountain peak, David sat blankly on the mountain, feeling at a loss. David didn't notice that after he threw the God King bow into his storage ring, the huge undead waved its hand, and countless undead had already begun climbing toward the mountain. When David realized, he found those undead had already crawled to his feet. Damn it! David was shocked. The dragon-slaying sword in his hand slashed along the way, and a sharp sword light flashed like lightning. Those undead who'd arrived at David's feet were instantly beheaded, and the power of countless Tao patterns poured into David's body. Looking at the beheaded undead before him, David was stunned for a moment. When they'd entered here earlier, the undead had ignored David's attacks, and they hadn't been easy to attack. But now that the black hole was gone, these undead began attacking David, and David was able to kill them. Seeing this scene, David became excited. With so many undead, the Tao pattern power he'd consumed should be replenished soon. Just as David was stunned, many undead had already climbed up. At this moment, David began holding the dragon-slaying sword and charged toward the undead, starting a massacre. Although these undead were numerous, they weren't strong. David could kill more than a dozen undead with one strike. However, the Tao pattern power produced by these undead was also very weak. David glanced at the densely packed undead under the mountain peak. Among them were quite a few undead leaders. Finally, his eyes fell on the huge undead over 10 meters tall. If this huge undead was beheaded, the Tao pattern power would definitely be explosive. Thinking of this, David leaped and jumped toward the mountain peak. David, in midair, kept waving the dragon-slaying sword. Sword glows, like shells, exploded among the army of undead. Countless undead were killed instantly, and the Tao pattern power in David's body instantly became one. David landed before the huge undead. In front of the huge undead, David's body seemed extremely small. However, David held the dragon-slaying sword in his hand without any fear. Looking up, he saw evil energy continuously emanating from the huge undead's body. This evil energy surrounded the huge undead, forming a transparent, shimmering armor. As the evil energy continued emanating from the huge undead, the shimmering armor grew more and more condensed, finally turning silvery. The huge undead looked down at David. Because of the armor, this huge undead looked more like a real person, but this person was too tall. When David looked at the huge undead, David instantly felt an extremely dangerous aura. At this moment, David's hairs stood on end. Chapter 23:92. Ha! Suddenly, the huge undead exhaled toward David. This breath of sinister energy instantly caused the surrounding space to start freezing. Countless white ice flowers densely followed the surrounding space and enveloped David. David only felt a gust of cold wind, then his surroundings turned into a vast expanse of white. The surrounding air condensed, David seemed frozen in this space. Damn, is this bastard so powerful? If I'd known, I wouldn't have come down to provoke him. David regretted for a moment. He hadn't expected this huge undead to be so powerful. It just exhaled, and he was trapped. But now that he was trapped, David had to get out. The surrounding space was frozen. David thought of his spiritual fire, so he flipped his palm, and a light blue flame rose. With the continuous increase of David's spiritual power, the spiritual fire grew more vigorous. Finally, David ruthlessly threw it toward the space before him. Boom! The space trembled. The condensed space made a shattering sound and finally shattered like glass. And the space around David recovered, the oppressive feeling disappeared. Damn it, if you come impolitely, don't blame me for being impolite. David held the dragon-slaying sword. Raging fire burned on the dragon-slaying sword. Immediately afterward, David leaped up, then fiercely chopped the dragon-slaying sword in his hand toward the head of the huge undead. A bright golden light streaked across the sky and slashed fiercely on the head of the huge undead. Clang! With a clear sound, David's dragon-slaying sword struck the head of the huge undead without causing the slightest scar. Not even the slightest trace on that shiny silver armor. This! David was dumbfounded. It was fine that his hard blow failed to injure the huge undead, but how could there be no trace on the opponent's armor? The huge undead looked at David, then waved afterward. A huge breath instantly knocked David away. At this moment, David's body was like a fired bullet, quickly hitting the mountain behind him. Under the huge friction between David's indestructible golden body and the air, raging fire ignited. At this time, David was like a ball of fire. Boom! David's body struck the stone wall heavily and was directly embedded into the mountain more than 10 meters deep. After a long time, David crawled out with difficulty. The indestructible golden body on his body was gone. His clothes were ragged like a beggar's, and the corners of his mouth were full of blood. It's so fucking perverted. David looked at the huge undead and couldn't help cursing. David knew now he was no match for this huge undead at all. Forget himself, even Chu Yunchang, an 8th-rank martial emperor, would be slapped away if he came. Seeing the huge undead walking toward him, David quickly took a deep breath, suddenly leaped up, and fled toward the mountaintop. When David fled to the mountaintop, he saw countless undead climbing up behind him. David was already injured, so he could only grit his teeth and keep slashing with the dragon-slaying sword. But this wasn't sustainable, those undead were climbing up endlessly. But soon, David thought of something and hurriedly took the God King Bow from his storage ring. David stuck the God King Bow into the ground. The God King Bow instantly emitted a bright golden light. Those undead who'd climbed the mountain instantly vanished without a trace under this golden light. Seeing this, the undead at the mountain's base began to retreat one after another. Even the huge undead retreated a long way after seeing the golden light emitted by the God King Bow. Chapter 2393. Seeing the huge undead retreat, David pondered for a moment. These undead are so afraid of the God King Bow. Could it be only the God King Bow can deal with that huge undead? David caressed the God King Bow, showing embarrassment. He couldn't even draw the bowstring now, so even if that huge bow was the king of undead sphere, what use was it? David sat cross-legged on the mountaintop, rested for a while, and recovered the spiritual power in his body. Looking at those densely packed undead, David seemed to have thought of a way. Then he put away the God King Bow. When David put away the God King Bow, those undead began climbing toward the mountaintop. And David kept slashing with the dragon-slaying sword in his hand to increase his Tao pattern power. When there were too many undead and David was somewhat powerless, he'd take out the God King Bow and instantly scare away those undead. Thus, David could kill the undead and increase his Tao pattern power without any danger. After feeling this method was feasible, David began killing the undead again and again. David himself didn't know how many days and nights he'd been beheading like this. Anyway, the Tao pattern power in David's body had become 5, and the aura emitted by the 5 Tao pattern powers was obviously much stronger. David felt the Tao pattern power in his body with his spiritual sense and fell into a dilemma. He didn't know whether he should use this Tao pattern power to elevate his realm or use it to try drawing the God King Bow. In the end, David still couldn't resist the temptation of the God King Bow, so he decided to give it a try, to see if he could draw the God King Bow. Holding his breath, David mobilized the Tao pattern power in his body. Immediately afterward, David's chest began to shine, and a strand of Tao pattern power slowly appeared. Then the Tao pattern power entered the God King Bow, and the God King bow began to tremble slightly, accompanied by a little light. David held the bow with one hand and pulled the string with the other. The Tao pattern power in his body continuously released, and the God King bow also began to change. Its aura continued to rise, and the bowstring in David's hand began to be pulled slightly. Soon, the bowstring was pulled by David a small distance. And the moment the bowstring was drawn, a light arrow appeared on the God King bow, emitting a dazzling golden light. This truly is a magic bow, it's amazing. David couldn't help but get excited and began pulling the bowstring with all his might. But soon, David found his 5 Tao pattern powers had all dimmed. Then the bowstring returned to its place, and the arrow on the God King bow disappeared. It's too perverted. David frowned. The power of 5 Tao patterns failed to completely draw the God King bow. Looking at the consumed Tao pattern power, David could only put away the God King bow. Fortunately, there were countless undead below, and the consumed Tao pattern power could be replenished quickly. Anyway, David was trapped here and couldn't go anywhere. Besides beheading these undead, which brought him a little fun, David really didn't know what to do. What would my mother do if I was trapped here for the rest of my life? What about the women around me? Who is his father? All kinds of mysteries, David hadn't solved them yet. He was unwilling. Moreover, David had never tasted any of the women around him. If they separated like this, David suddenly felt a little regretful. No, when I can get out of here, I must make them my real women. David secretly made up his mind. Then he held the dragon-slaying sword and started fighting again. A large number of undead disappeared under David's sword. While David was still trapped here, beheading undead every day, the sky in the 8 secret realms had already begun to change, and the entire 8 secret realms were in chaos. Chapter 2394. In the Fire Gate Secret Realm. Jean Lifu of Jianyue Pavilion, with many Jianyue Pavilion disciples, launched a crazy attack on the Gu family and Tianlulu. The entire Fire Gate Secret Realm was in flames of war. Jean Lifu, are you fucking crazy? Why did you suddenly attack us? Gu Zongsheng's face was pale at this time. Looking at Jean Lifu before him, he asked in puzzlement. Gu Zongsheng, different ways do not conspire. Spiritual energy will be revived soon. Keeping you people will only ruin our business, so we must kill you first. Jean Lifu said with a murderous look. Jean Lifu, what do you mean by that? Could it be you're the one who colluded with the Demon Heart sect? You want to follow the Demon Heart sect to artificially control the revival of spiritual energy? Jiang Wuya of Tianluo Tower frowned and asked Jean Lifu. That's right. Since you're all going to die, I won't hide it anymore. In fact, we've long been united with the Demon Heart sect. When spiritual energy revives, we'll rule the whole world. Jean Lifu smiled coldly, then gently pulled. The clothes on his body were torn off, and a bright purple robe was put on him. You're actually the purple-robed emissary of the Demon Heart sect? Gu Zongsheng and Jiang Wuya were startled at the same time, their eyes narrowing involuntarily. They'd never imagined Jean Lifu, who'd lived in this Fire Gate secret realm for decades, was the purple-robed emissary of the Demon Heart sect. From this, the collusion between Jianyue Pavilion and the Demon Heart sect hadn't happened overnight. Jean Lifu, why on earth? You're the mighty Jianyue Pavilion master, why willingly be the Demon Heart sect's lackey? Gu Zongsheng truly didn't understand what Jean Lifu was thinking. Was being the master not good? He just wanted to be a dog. You guys know nothing. As long as we can revive spiritual energy, we'll have the chance to attack the heavenly human realm if we rule the entire secular world. Do you think my dream is only this small secret realm? I want to bring my disciples into the heavenly human realm, even step into the immortal realm, and become the ruler of the entire world. Jean Lifu looked forward infinitely, his face full of excitement. Looking at Jean Lifu's appearance, Jiang Wuya smiled and said, "It's just you, you still want to attack the heavenly human realm, want to step into the immortal realm? You're overestimating yourself. You're really overestimating yourself. Even if spiritual energy is really revived, you're just a dog. Humph, facing death, still so stubborn." Jin Lifu was furious. His aura surged, and with a single palm, he struck toward Gutsangsheng and Jiang Wuya. Gutsangsheng and Jiang Wuya teamed up and began fighting Jin Lifu. The same scene was happening in each of the 8 secret realms. Conflicts and fights erupted in each secret realm. In the Thundergate secret realm, Han Fusheng of Zixia Mansion sipped tea and listened to pleasant music. Because his wife and Lingrong watched too closely, Han Fusheng never had the chance to find Long Ruotong, also David's mother. However, Han Fusheng arranged Long Ruotong in a hidden place, where he had someone take care of her daily, much better than when she was in the Long family's dungeon. Mansion Master. At this moment, Zixia Mansion's housekeeper walked in quickly. What's the matter? In such a hurry? Han Fusheng asked with a glance. Mansion Master, Lu Buwei of Wanyue Castle has begun taking people around to annex other sects and families. In the entire Thundergate secret realm, many small sects and families were annexed by Wanyue Castle. If the turmoil in the Thundergate secret realm continues, I fear our Zixia Mansion will also suffer. The housekeeper whispered. That's Lu Buwei's ambition. Those small sects have nothing to annex, they don't have any resources. Since he likes it, let him. Wanyue Castle is not powerful. Even if all the small sects and families stand together, they can't do anything to our Zixia Mansion. Our 2 families have the best relationship. Lu Buwei always wants me to marry Qing'er to his son. Han Fusheng said indifferently. Chapter 2395. Mansion Master, I'm afraid. Alright, go on. Han Fusheng impatiently sent the butler away. Since Lu Buwei liked to annex, let him. Han Fusheng wasn't worried at all. But what Han Fusheng didn't know was that after Lu Buwei annexed those small sects and families, he'd annex their Zixia Mansion. In their eyes, there was no such thing as good or bad relationships, only benefits. Lu Buwei was also a purple-robed emissary, but these purple-robed emissaries didn't know each other's identities. Ever since they'd received the order from Daning last time, they'd been plotting in their respective secret realms. They had to eradicate all unfavorable factors before spiritual energy revived. Otherwise, after spiritual energy revived, people like them wouldn't be the only ones to benefit. At this time, the other secret realms were also filled with corpses and seas of blood. There was a purple-robed emissary from the Demon Heart sect in each secret realm. It was clear the Demon Heart sect's big move had been planned for many years. Although the 8 secret realms were already in chaos, the secular world hadn't been affected at all and remained peaceful. Inside the Guardian Court in Kyoto, Mr. Sher smoked a cigarette, his face seeming somewhat sorrowful. The tea before Mr. Sher was already cold, but Mr. Sher hadn't taken a sip. This would never happen normally, but Mr. Sher was a little abnormal today. Mr. Sher, the tea's cold. Let me change it for you. Xing Jun stepped forward and whispered. No, you can go out. Mr. Sher waved his hand. Seeing this, Xing Jun could only retreat obediently. Now that the 8 secret realms are in turmoil, what must come will still come. I hope this time David can stop this catastrophe and save all humans in the secular world. Mr. Sher muttered to himself. At that moment, Mr. Sher's office door was suddenly pushed open. One must know no one could enter Mr. Sher's office without notifying and knocking. But now several people pushed the door and walked in. Without even looking, Mr. Sher knew who was coming. How's your cultivation? Mr. Sher asked with a slight smile. Mr. Sher, we've already learned what you taught us. Today we want you to teach us some more. Ji Rushua stepped forward slowly and said to Mr. Sher. It turned out Ji Rushua and the others had come. Since receiving Mr. Sher's guidance, they'd started practicing diligently. Moreover, Mr. Sher had said the few of them could come to him without any notification, they could just push the door and enter. So as soon as Ji Rushua and the others came in, Mr. Sher knew. So fast? Mr. Sher was a little surprised. Sisters, let's show Mr. Sher. After speaking, Ji Rushua, Gu Linger, and Gu Jiayi began to move. In a blink, the few had already arrived outside the courtyard. Then a terrifying aura erupted, and they joined forces to shoot a bright beam of light that shot straight into the sky, as if wanting to poke a big hole. Instantly, the sky began to change. The originally clear sky began to be covered with dark clouds, and a black cloud pressed toward the guardian court. "Alright, don't cause panic among the crowd." Seeing this, Mr. Sure waved his hand. The several withdrew their auras, and the vision in the sky instantly disappeared. "You really haven't disappointed me. It wasn't in vain I spent all the capital's resources on you. Then I'll teach you a few more techniques. But remember, your strength must be kept secret, used as a trump card. You can only strike when David is in the most danger." Mr. Sure instructed Ji Rushue and the others. "Mr. Sure, don't worry. We understand." Ji Rushue nodded. She did this to prevent David from becoming lazy. With so many women around who could beat him, David might not work hard in the future. Mr. Sure began teaching Ji Rushue and the others new cultivation techniques again. Chapter 2396. On the Nameless Mountain. Holding the dragon-slaying sword, David had already killed countless undead. The Tao pattern power in his body had reached 8. With one more Tao pattern power, it would be complete. It was a pity no matter how hard David tried to kill the undead, the final lines never lit up. Could it be the last Tao pattern power requires something special? David was a little frustrated. Since he couldn't increase Tao pattern power, killing undead was meaningless for David. Looking at the 10-meter-tall undead under the mountain peak, David started to move again. If I kill this big guy, I wonder if it can form 9 Tao pattern powers? David looked at the huge undead, thinking to himself. In the end, David leaped up and descended. He was going to try. Anyway, with the God King Bao, these undead couldn't do anything to him. If he couldn't win, he could run back to this mountain. The dragon-slaying sword in David's hand swung 2 sword beams, directly cutting a path. Then he arrived before the huge undead in a blink. Seeing David, the huge undead roared. For so long, they'd been unable to do anything to David, which had already pissed off this huge undead. David didn't hesitate. He swung his sword and slashed at the huge undead. But when David's dragon-slaying sword struck the huge undead's armor, bursts of fire instantly erupted. There was still no way to break this huge undead's armor, it couldn't cause any damage at all. The huge undead roared and slapped heavily at David. David used his flexible figure to dodge instantly. Looking at the huge undead before him, David needed to find a weak spot. Then David saw there seemed to be a place where the dragon-slaying sword could be inserted into the undead's neck, so he leaped up. The dragon-slaying sword in his hand emitted rays of light. He thrust toward the neck. With this sword, David stabbed in very smoothly, even piercing the entire dragon-slaying sword into the undead's neck. Seeing this, David was ecstatic. The huge undead should surely die now. But who knew? The undead didn't seem affected at all but became somewhat manic, screaming and continuously waving its hands, shooting at David. A series of terrifying evil energies formed a tornado, directly blowing David far away, then he fell heavily to the ground. David hurriedly got up. With a wave of his hand, the dragon-slaying sword flew back to his hand. Then he quickly ran toward the mountaintop. Sitting on the mountain peak, David looked at the undead below and couldn't help cursing their ancestors again. Currently, David was no match for that huge undead at all, and that undead seemed impossible to kill. But because of the God King Bao, those undead dared not come up. Damn it, why can't I draw this broken bow? David held the God King Bao and angrily pulled the bowstring again. But this time, David directly drew the bowstring, and a golden arrow instantly appeared on the God King Bao. David looked at the God King Bao in his hand, his eyes full of excitement. He hadn't expected to draw it. The moment David drew the God King Bao, the undead under the mountain seemed frightened, turned around, and fled one by one. Even the huge undead took a step forward, quickly escaping David's sight. Without even thinking, David aimed the God King Bao in his hand at the huge undead. Whoosh! As soon as David released, a golden arrow shot out instantly, piercing through the huge undead in just a blink. Without any roar, the huge undead fell to the ground instantly, turned into a burst of evil energy, and came straight toward David. When this energy entered David's body, the Tao pattern power in his body finally lit up the ninth path. Chapter 2397. It's complete, the Tao pattern power is finally complete. David shouted excitedly. Looking at the God King bow in his hand, David pulled without hesitation. Instantly, he stretched the bowstring to full draw, only to see 3 huge arrows appear on the God King bow. Swish! 3 arrows were fired together, like 3 cannonballs falling from the sky. With raging flames, they shot directly toward the countless undead under the mountain peak. Boom boom boom. With the sound of explosions, countless undead were annihilated. Ha ha ha, happy. This God King bow is so fucking awesome. David laughed out loud. But David didn't notice at all that as he pulled the God King bow, the surrounding world began to change. The originally gray sky became darker and more oppressive at this moment. It was as if a storm was coming. Only when it was completely dark and countless undead no longer fled but knelt on the ground, did David notice something. What's going on here? David looked blankly at everything around him, not understanding what had happened. He saw a streak of light in the sky, then rushing toward him at extremely high speed. Seeing this, David hastily pulled the God King bow and assumed a defensive posture. After the streak of light came to David, it stopped instantly, then a figure appeared. When David saw someone had appeared, he was immediately overjoyed. Now he could inquire about where this place was. But when he saw the newcomer's face, he was instantly stunned. When the others saw it was David, they also froze on the spot. Why is it you? The two made surprised voices almost simultaneously. It turned out the other was none other than the demon David had saved. How did you get here? The demon asked David in surprise. When he saw David holding the God King bow, he asked again, did you draw this God King bow? Yes I did. David nodded, then briefly told the demon how he'd come here. Demon, haven't you already returned to the heavenly human realm? And looking at you like this, you're no longer a remnant soul. Could it be you've reshaped your body? David didn't understand why the demon appeared here. The demon didn't answer David but muttered to himself, damn, I didn't expect there to be a passage beneath the altar. You still haven't answered me, what is this place? Didn't you go to the heavenly human realm? David asked the demon. This is the heavenly human realm, the demon said. What? This is the heavenly human realm? David was stunned for a moment and looked around in disbelief. How is the heavenly human realm like this? The heavenly human realm was completely different from what David had imagined. Alright, I don't have time to explain. However you got here, go back quickly, or soon you won't be able to leave. The demon urgently urged David. But I can't go back, the black hole has disappeared, and I can't return. David said. Did you get a crystal clear arrow here? The demon asked. Yes. David took the arrow from his storage ring. Shoot this arrow into the sky with the God King bow, and the passage will open. The demon said to David. I want to know, where in the heavenly human realm is this place? Since I'm here, can't you, as the host, show me around the heavenly human realm? Why are you in such a hurry to send me back? David didn't understand why this demon was so anxious for him to return. I really don't have time to explain. Hurry up and draw the God King bow to open the passage. Chapter 2398. Seeing the demon's anxious look, David didn't say anything else and aimed at the dark sky. Swish! David shot the crystal clear arrow into the sky with all his might. The arrow burst in the air instantly. The originally oppressive, dark sky cleared at that moment. And under the blue sky, a black hole slowly appeared. There was immense suction around the black hole, constantly pulling everything in. After the undead saw the black hole, they all slowly floated into the air, then were sucked into the black hole. Go, go! The demon urgently urged David when he saw the black hole appear. David wanted to say something, but the demon slapped him out, sending David directly near the black hole. The immense suction directly sucked David in. After David's figure completely disappeared, the demon waved his hand, and the black hole in the sky slowly vanished. The demon looked up at the sky and muttered to himself, "No wonder he's the dragon's son, he drew the god King Bao so easily." Just after speaking, the demon frowned slightly, his face instantly changing, tense. He glanced not far away, then transformed into a streak of light, vanishing instantly. Just after the demon left, more than a dozen beams of light instantly appeared, directly on the mountain peak. A dozen individuals stared at the surroundings. To be exact, they weren't human but a dozen monsters with animal heads and human bodies. "My lord, the god King Bao is gone. Someone must have drawn it." A rat-headed man came over and said to a lion-headed man, "Who the hell is it? They drew the god King Bao and killed the undead titan." There was a chill in the lion-head's eyes, his tone even more sinister. The others were all silent. After a while, the lion-head waved his hand. "Find them. I must find the person who drew the god King Bao." Soon, these beast-headed monsters also transformed into streaks of light and disappeared. At this time, David returned to the valley after passing through incomparable darkness. When he climbed out of the cave, the valley was already filled with densely packed undead. These undead were trapped here, the valley gate was closed, and they couldn't get out at all. Who the hell closed the gate? Could it be Leng Wudao and the others don't want me to leave? David saw the closed valley gate and guessed Leng Wudao and the others had done it. But with so many undead, David wasn't in a hurry to leave. He'd kill these undead first and replenish his Dao pattern power. It's just in this valley, David didn't use the god King Bao. To deal with these ordinary undead, the dragon-slaying sword was enough. Holding the dragon-slaying sword, David began a frenzied massacre. The more he killed, the more excited he became. And at this moment, in the abyss outside the valley, Leng Wudao and the others were practicing the technique taught by Yao Qing. After so many days, they could be considered to have grasped the technique's mysteries. No wonder so many people would rather be cursed than practice evil cultivation. Evil cultivation techniques are truly powerful, just a bit cruel and bloody. After learning the technique, Leng Wudao said excitedly, "In this society, strength is everything. The strong preying on the weak is natural, so there's no cruelty. Let's open the door and release those undead." "I can't wait," Tong Haiyang said. "Alright, then let's open the door. After so many days, there are probably a lot of undead inside. But these undead still need us to kill them. The other disciples can follow behind," Leng Wudao said. Since Leng Wudao had spoken, of course no one would disobey. Disciples of the major sects had no right to speak at all. Leng Wudao and the others stepped forward and began working together to open the valley gate. Chapter 2399. When Leng Wudao and the others opened the door, not far from the abyss, Yu Buchuan and Chu Yunchang had been searching for David for many days. But there was no sign of David, and everyone was very anxious. "Master, something really happened to Mr. Chen, right?" Lu Xing said to Yu Buchuan. "Don't talk nonsense. Nothing will happen to Mr. Chen." Yu Buchuan gave Lu Xing a hard look. "Looks like I need to use my trick." The diviner took a deep breath. After speaking, he actually took a handful of copper coins directly from his body. Then he tossed the copper coins into the air. "Form the array," the diviner shouted loudly. The divination gang disciples immediately formed a bagua shape, each catching a copper coin. At the same time, these divination gang disciples forced a drop of essence blood from between their brows and dripped it onto the copper coins. The diviner suddenly slapped his chest with his palm. Pfft! A mouthful of blood spewed from the diviner's mouth, instantly forming a blood-red curtain in the air. For a moment, the copper coins in the divination gang disciples' hands began emitting light, shining on the blood-red curtain. Slowly, a figure appeared on the curtain, soon becoming clear. It was the scene of David holding the dragon-slaying sword, beheading undead. "Mr. Chen, it's Mr. Chen!" Lu Rui shouted excitedly. "That's in that valley, the valley in the abyss." Yu Buchuan could also see David was in that valley. The image only appeared for a few seconds, then vanished instantly. All the copper coins in the divination gang disciples' hands shattered instantly. And the diviner fell heavily to the ground, clearly seriously injured. Seeing this, Chu Yunchang extended his hand, and a burst of energy instantly entered the diviner's body. Seeing Mr. Chen is fine, I'm relieved. Senior Chu doesn't need to worry about me. Go find Mr. Chen. I'll be fine after a few days of self-cultivation. The diviner said weakly. Alright, cultivate well here. We'll be back soon. Chu Yunchang nodded. Chu Yunchang led Yubuchuan quickly toward the abyss, while the diviner and many divination gang disciples stayed behind. The diviner had suffered internal injuries from using that trick earlier. In the abyss, Leng Wudao led everyone to open the door, happily wanting to kill undead and improve their strength. But when the door slowly opened, everyone was dumbfounded. Because the valley was empty, where were the undead? No, why are there suddenly no undead here? Leng Wudao said in great surprise. Let's go inside and see if something happened at the cave entrance. Tong Haiyang planned to go to the cave entrance where undead emerged. But just as they were about to walk toward the valley depths, they found a figure standing before them. When the figure slowly turned around, everyone was stunned. David? Almost in unison, everyone wore incredulous expressions. They'd thought David would have died long ago after jumping into the black hole, but they hadn't expected David to still be alive. From this, David must have killed all the undead in this valley without question. You're not dead? Leng Wudao said in surprise. You're not dead yet, how could I die? David showed a cold smile. Humph, even if you didn't die, you won't live now. This time, I'll kill you and watch you be chopped into mincemeat. This time, Leng Wudao had to watch David die with his own eyes. I'm afraid you don't have that ability. You won't be able to kill me at all. David's expression was calm. Even facing Leng Wudao and the other hidden world experts, his heart was undisturbed. With the God King Bao in hand, David could ignore these people before him. Chapter 2400. You bastard, looking for death. Leng Wudao didn't want to waste words with David, he was going to attack. But before Leng Wudao moved, suddenly a terrifying aura came from outside, then several figures stood before David. Dare to be rude to Mr. Chen, you're looking for death. Chu Yunchang's eyes widened angrily. With a wave of his palm, a huge, terrifying force instantly sent Leng Wudao flying. When everyone saw Chu Yunchang appear suddenly, they were all terrified. After all, not long ago, Chu Yunchang had shown them the power of the transformation realm. Leng Wudao got up and looked at Chu Yunchang with a pale face, his heart shocked. Although Chu Yunchang hadn't reached the